Welcome to Poker Fraud Alert Radio. This is being broadcast live and recorded live on June 18th, 2024. The time right now, 11:40 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. I am broadcasting this from the World Series of Poker. I am here. I played today. Unfortunately, the fact that I'm broadcasting right now before the end of the day of the event I played means that I'm not in it anymore. It means I did not cash. So I'll give you a rundown of my events so far, and I have a lot of World Series of Poker stories to tell you since we have not been on the air in 18 days. So I'll try to get to as much as I can. I will be playing again tomorrow in the morning, so I can't stay up too late, but I'll see what I can get in tonight. And then the next show, who knows when it'll be. Probably sometime next week is my guess. I'm definitely going to get another one in before the main event starts for sure. If you want to call the show, as always, the phone number is 775-FRAUD-55, 775-372-8355 is the number. You can also text the show at any time. Same number, 775-372-8355. If you do not state at the beginning of your text that you don't want me to read it on the air, then I might read it on the air if I get the text during the live broadcast. We also have a call to listen line. It's very simple. You just call up and listen. It's not a way to call and talk to me, but it is a way to call and listen to me. That phone number is 518-931-1189, 518-931-1189. It's very simple. You just call from any phone in the world that can dial the U.S. It does not require a smartphone. It does not require a computer. It does not require the internet. It does not require a data plan. It doesn't require a good cell signal. Nothing like that. No apps, nothing like that. You just call up and listen. And it never buffers and it never freezes. I promise you that. 518-931-1189, the call to listen line. When we're not live on the air, it will play streaming reruns of our 12 and a half years of shows that we have done up to this date. Just pick one at random and just run it as if it's live and keep doing that over and over until we come back live on the air. We have a chat room. If you're listening live, you're welcome to go in there. It does require a Poker Fraud Alert forum account in good standing. If you're not listening live, which is most of you, you don't have to bother to go in there because there won't be anyone to talk to. I do prefer if you want to send me a message, you do so by text. That is what I check most often, though I will take a look at the chat room every once in a while. You just got to remember, I'm doing everything here. I don't have any show engineer. I don't have any producer. I don't even have a co-host right now. So it's just me doing everything. So there's only so much I can do at once. There is no free roll tonight. We just kind of squeezed in the show when we could. Hopefully there'll be one next time I do the show. I want to tell you the ways you can listen to the show. We are on iTunes, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartMedia, Spotify, Bullhorn. Actually, I think Bullhorn's gone. You know what? I got to take Bullhorn down. Bullhorn has bit the dust. Looks like they've stopped updating their site. We are on CastBox. We are on Amazon Alexa. Just say, Alexa, play Poker Fraud Alert Radio Podcast. Exactly like that. It'll play the latest episode. If not, just say, Alexa, play the latest episode. And most importantly, we are on YouTube. YouTube does not have any video content. Some people have asked, well, will I see some stuff like the videos that you play during the show? Will we actually see the videos? The answer is no. All you will see is the Poker Fraud Alert Radio logo the entire time. The YouTube post is just to be able to listen to the show. It's another way to listen to the show. I know a lot of you like to use YouTube, so that's why I put it up there. It's actually extra effort for me to get it up on YouTube, because unlike all those other methods to listen, it doesn't post automatically to YouTube. I have to do it myself. I have to convert it to the right format. It takes some time, but there was a lot of demand for it, so I did it. Please keep in mind that I do get a little bit of money when you use YouTube. So if you do want to help the show and you want me to make a little bit of money back, because the site does lose money by design, then listen on YouTube. But if the ads bug you, I understand. I try to keep them to a minimum. I'm actually the one who selects where they go. I don't let YouTube place it, or it'll be like every 8 minutes, or it'll be terrible. So I place them intelligently and infrequently. But still, if the ads bug you and you want to listen some other way, that's fine. I'm just telling you, if you listen on YouTube, then I make a little bit. If you listen any other way, I don't make anything. Okay, so here's the agenda, and then we'll get going. I have a number of World Series of Poker stories because the last show was 18 days ago, and we've had 18 days of the World Series since. So a lot of stuff to say. I'll tell you about the 7 events I've played since the last show. I had played 1 event before the last show, did not cash. I had 7 more that were on the schedule, and I did play, and I'll tell you how they went. Then I'll tell you something I witnessed. I wasn't that close to it, but I did witness it, and it's a fairly big story from the World Series. A woman who was in the $1,500 Mixed Omaha event, which I played, got disqualified and trespassed from All Caesars properties because she had a freakout, a total freakout, and they removed her. So I'll tell you about that. In fact, I can do more than tell you. I can play it for you because someone recorded it, and you'll get to hear her freaking out, and I'll tell you what's going on because this is an audio show, so I'll have to describe it to you. Then there were 2 different people who won bracelets who apparently don't have a very clean past. So you don't have to be a good person to win a World Series bracelet. I'm not sure if you knew that. Like Russ Hamilton, for example. So we had 2 people win bracelets this year who have a very questionable past, to say the least. One of them, Brent Hart, was accused of scamming in 2022 by a guy named Elvis, actually. And Elvis came back out of the woodwork to reiterate the allegations and said that Brent still has not made it right. So I'll tell you about the allegations against Brent Hart, recent WSOP bracelet winner, and an even more interesting story. Antonio Galiana not only won a World Series bracelet, but he pulled off a very interesting bluff with 7 high that everyone in poker has been sharing and talking about. Some people have said it's been the best bluff of the World Series of Poker. And he went on to win the bracelet. This was actually heads up for a bracelet when he pulled off that bluff. Well, it turned out he did more than just bluff at the poker table. He is accused of also bluffing his staking operation, or the operation that he was using to stake him, back in 2018. And he was accused of stealing money from them by falsifying results. But it's a very complicated scam. And I will explain what he's being accused of and all the work that apparently went into this. It's a pretty interesting story. The winner of the Mysery Millions Bounty, which is $1 million bounty, acted very unexcited when he won it. There is an iconic picture of the first $1 million bounty winner, which is Poker Fraud Alert radio listener Matt Glantz. He pulled the $1 million bounty 2 years ago, and he put his arms up in the air, and his mouth was wide open. It was like a triumphant-looking picture, and it went around the internet, and people thought it was cool. And it was a very fitting picture. And I would probably react that way, too, if I pulled the $1 million bounty. So that's what you'd expect of someone who'd pull the $1 million bounty, what Matt Glantz did. But the guy who won it this year couldn't have been less excited, and then he ran back to his seat to keep playing the tournament. He couldn't even enjoy it for a second. He ran back because he was missing hands. He sprinted back, and people thought this was ridiculous. Why was he not that happy about winning a $1 million bounty? And no one ever solved the mystery of that. And people thought, well, maybe he's just kind of a quiet guy. Maybe he's just a humble guy, doesn't like to celebrate. Well, I have been told a rumor as to the actual reason he wasn't that excited. And no one has posted this publicly as far as I know. So I will let you know what I heard. And keep in mind, it's just a rumor, but I'll let you know what I heard, a Poker Fraud Alert radio exclusive, when we get to that segment tonight. Men the Master Wynn. He's not someone with a good reputation. He's not a very trustworthy guy. He is known to be a cheater and an angle shooter. That is his reputation. Pretty much anyone who's been around poker for any length of time knows his reputation. You ask anyone who knows of him, and they'll say, oh yeah, this guy's a scumbag, he's a cheater, he's an angle shooter. That is his reputation. Well, he has another story to add to the pile here, because he is accused of grabbing chips out of a pot after losing a hand in a multi-way all-in. And in fact, it's on video. So I'll tell you what I saw, and I'll tell you where to find this video, and you can judge for yourself. In my opinion, it looks pretty damn bad. Daniel Negreanu has been complaining about a controversial ruling that occurred after a player who thought he won the pot mucked his hand when there was still someone in the pot. So what do you do in that situation? Well, obviously, the one who has not mucked his hand yet automatically wins. That's pretty obvious, but the amount that he's awarded is not exactly straightforward when you think about it, and I'll explain the situation when we get there. Nitty pro poker players, especially European ones, have been angling this year the late registration. So what's been happening this year is that people max late reg, which means registering as late as possible to events, and then stall before taking their seat. And in some cases, people were taking their seat as much as an hour after they late registered. So they got an extra hour to sit down with more people busting. I'll explain why that's such a huge advantage and why that was such a problem and what the World Series has done about it and what I think of their solution, because their solution was not perfect. Final World Series story, which will be the bulk of our show. Cheater Ali Imsirovic is back at the World Series of Poker. I'll tell you how he has appeared here and what people think of this. Then we'll do some non-World Series topics if we have time. I got in a Twitter debate again with Ike Haxton involving his N95 mask that he always wears at the poker table. I know we've talked about this before, but I got in a fresh debate about it. Not really with Ike directly. He doesn't like to engage me about this, but other people who were defending him were engaging me. So if we have time, we'll get to that. The ladies' event at the Wynn, not the World Series event, but the ladies' event at the Wynn finished with an embarrassing 15-way chop. That is, it had 15 people left, and they did a chop based upon their chip stacks. The final 15 didn't want to play it out. Too much risk. So that's been getting a lot of derision today on Twitter, including from some women. A Caesars-wide system outage knocked out all the restaurants at Paris and maybe the other casinos, but I know this because it affected me. It affected me and Cal Watt, Bart Hansen, and a fourth person that you guys don't know. We were attempting to go to dinner at one of the restaurants at Paris, and we could not get in because of this outage. But the most interesting thing about this outage is that people were not allowed to leave who were already dining there due to their inability to take payment during the outage. So I'll tell you how helpless these restaurants became because of this network outage and how stupid it is that their system's designed this way. And also we'll discuss whether the casino has a right to hold you there when their own outage prevents them from taking payment from you. So that is our agenda for tonight. Let's just jump right into it. So I had 7 more events on the schedule since the last one. I played one event before the last show, the 08 event, $1,500 limit Omaha 8 or better. I did not cash. I made day 2 with a short stack and busted. It actually lasted like about an hour before busting that tiny stack, which is surprising, but I didn't run it up or bust. I lasted like an hour, then busted. And I had Alan Kessler and Matt Glantz on either side of me. Anyway, I played 7 more events since then. And let me tell you, this has not been a pleasurable World Series for me. It has not been. I played the $1,500 Limit Hold'em event and just didn't do well. Just didn't make it far, was one of the earlier ones out. Just ran bad. I had one guy at the table who was very obnoxious with me. I didn't know him. I don't think he knew me. But he was just very obnoxious with me because I put a bad beat on him, which I understand why it was an annoying beat to take, because he had a monster flop and then ended up losing to a hand that wasn't that great. So basically what happened was the flop was Jack 6-8. I had 8-7 in the big blind. This is limit hold'em, remember, so you can't bet big to knock people off or anything. So I had 8-7. Turned out he had pocket 6s, so it was Jack 6-8. So 8-7 was pretty crushed. So do you think I backdoored a straight on him? No, it was worse than that. The turn was a jack, and then the river was another jack, so that actually gave me the better full house. So he flopped a set against middle pair, and then because it went jack-jack, I ended up with a better full house. Basically, his set of 6s became counterfeit. So he already said it was stupid. He talked about how what I did was stupid. And I didn't argue much with him. I just said, stupid? That wasn't stupid. Come on now. Because it wasn't. At limit hold'em, it's very standard. Against one person who's raising in fairly late position, there's a very decent chance that your middle pair is good. So I check called both streets, and then the river, of course, a third jack. That makes it pretty unlikely he had a jack. So yeah, he could have a better pair than me, but he could also not. So I was just going to check call down with that. Now, like if an ace at the turn, I would have check folded. But yeah, I'm going to call down when it's jack 8-6, when I have 8-7, it goes jack-jack and limit hold'em. So it wasn't stupid. It was a bad beat for sure. And then another one was more ridiculous that he got mad. I had queen jack, and the board came like 9-10 low card. I was in late position time, and he was in the blind. So I raised, and he called. Maybe his mid position, whatever it was. But I raised, he called from the blind. He check raised me on the flop, this 10-9 low card flop. But I've got an open ender, obviously. I'm not going anywhere. The turn is another 9. Not thrilled to see it, but I'm not going to let it go. Again, limit hold'em, you don't fear the full house so much here. He bet out, and I called. And then the river, I got an 8. So I had my straight. So I raised him when he bet out. And then he was pissed off, and he called, and I won. And he showed that he had, like, ace-9. So he was very annoyed that he had trips and lost here. And he started grumbling that I had the nerve to raise him on the river because he could have had a full house. Well, guess what? You didn't have a full house, and you paid me off, so my river raise was correct. I mean, how can you complain about a raise where you pay it off and you're behind? I wasn't 100% sure I was ahead because I didn't have the nuts. Yeah, he could have had me beat. He could have had a full house, but I thought there was a higher chance that he had just a 10 or just a 9 and would probably pay me off, and I was right. So, okay. Like, these are standard hands. I wouldn't have been frustrated with any player who beats me that way if it was reversed. I wouldn't have loved the fact that I lost the hand, but you can't be mad at the player. But he made a lot of nasty remarks, and I didn't really engage with him. The guy was just an idiot. Usually when people bitch like this at the table about how you're playing when you beat them, it's not even worth getting into an argument with them because you might as well just let them sit there and stew and be tilted and play worse. There's no point to get into these type of arguments, so I just let him go off. But it's so funny. And he didn't know who I was, so he didn't even know that, this is limit hold'em. I have a bracelet in that game. I have a third place in that. I have a fifth place finish at the higher buy-in event. I think I'm like 12th all-time in limit hold'em overall cashes, like amount cashed in World Series of Poker history. You can look that up. So he's thinking you're calling me an idiot. You got to be kidding me. I'll play that guy all day. If he wants to play me heads up, I'll play him all day. Pretty ridiculous. But I didn't do well in that event. Despite those two hands against that guy, I was losing against everybody else. So I did not do well in that event. And then I started an unfortunate streak. And that was every event I was playing had a rebuy. And I was getting past the rebuy stage. So I didn't even have to think about rebuying because I got past the rebuy period. But then I would not get all that close to the money. I'd get semi-close. I had a lot of times I was between like 2/3 and 3/4 of the field out ahead of me. But you got to get past 85% to cash. So I wasn't that close to the money in any of them. But event after event, I kept having that same thing happen. It happened at the PLO8 event. It happened at the Mystery Millions. It happened at the Big O event. It happened at the 3K Limit Hold'em 6-backs event. That one I got Matt Glantz also. That event, it was funny because we started off with a table that just really had some awful players. So it was a good table. Now, yeah, I had Daniel Adema to my right, and he's a very good player from Canada. And Matt Glantz, of course, is a good player. So, those guys obviously are tough, but there were some real fish at the table. And the problem was the fish were chunking off to everybody else and not to me. So I was not going anywhere. And the fish were shooting off, the fish were gone, and then they were eventually replaced by all good players. So at one point, the table was just everybody's a good limit hold'em player. Every single person there knew how to play the game very well. And people were commenting that this was the worst table. It was the worst table in the event. Not as far as like big names. It's not like a table of star-studded players. It was just these were all good/solid limit hold'em players. There was no spot at the table at all. And this is on day one. So it sucked how it went from a very good starting table to a shit table, the worst one in the event. I was getting short. I had ace-king up against nines, and the board's ace-queen-9, so that was the end of me there. Then I went back to LA after the Big O event, after I busted that. And none of these events I ever had a big stack. The biggest stack I had was the Mysery Millions. I had 116K at one point. I was down to like 7K, and I ran it up to 116. But that's not as good as it sounds because you started with 25. The 116 was pretty good, but it wasn't wonderful. No, actually, he started with more than 25. I think he started with 35. I don't remember. Something like that, 30, 35. 116 was pretty good, but it wasn't like crushing, and then I never got past that. I just dwindled down. So again, made it sort of close to the money, but not really close. So I went back, and I was 0 for 6 in my first wave of events I played. 3 Omaha events, 2 limit hold'em events, and 1 no limit hold'em event. Bricked them all. Didn't rebuy any. Single bullet on all of them, but bricked them all. I came back to play the event on the 16th, the Mixed Omaha, which is going on right now, and Phil Hellmuth is at the final table. I haven't looked how he's doing. At the Mixed Omaha, same thing. Didn't rebuy. Again, got through about maybe 2/3, 70% of the field, and busted. Never had a good stack. And I got rivered to be knocked out of it. Flopped a set of 4s, and I got rivered by a 5 to make a wheel for someone, which obviously wins both high and low. So that was the end of me. That made over 7. 8th event was today, the seniors event. Now, seniors has 2 starting days. One is June 18th, one is June 19th. So my plan was to put in 2 bullets today, if necessary. That's the most you can do. And then 1 bullet tomorrow, the 19th. And that's exactly what I did in 2022 and 2023. So I'm not going to invest 4 bullets in this. There's just too much invested into a 1K event. I'm willing to go up to 3. It is a very good event in that there's a lot of players in the event who are not very good. So it's likely that if you know what you're doing, you'll be a lot better than most players at the table. And of course, you're also missing all the good pros that are under 50. You have to be 50 or older to play that event. I am 52, so this is my 3rd year. In 2022 at the seniors, I bricked both bullets on the first starting day, came back to play the second starting day, just planning to put 1 bullet in, and immediately got down to 6K from the starting 20. So I thought, well, this is going to be a fail. Then I ran it back up, and I kept running it up, and I made day 2, and I cashed, and then I got deep, and then I started getting short because I got it in good against someone who had about half the chips I did, and he turned me when he was all in, so ate half my stack, then I dwindled down from there. Anyway, I squeezed from the blind when everybody limped when I had ace-10 suited. Turned out one of the limpers had pocket jacks, and I was out. That was in 22. I was out 200-something out of around 8,000. 2023. Bricked first 2 bullets on day 1A. Day 1B, said I'll put 1 more bullet into it, and I got down to 6K. Sound familiar? Yeah, just like the year before. Did I bust? No, just like the year before I ran it up. Did I make it deep? Yes. And I was 200-something place because, once again, I got short and I squeezed from the blinds and ran into pocket jacks and lost. I mean, could that have been any more similar? It was like the 2 years were identical, every detail of them. So maybe that'll be the case this year, because I haven't put in my 3rd bullet yet. That's coming up at 10 in the morning. That's why I can't do the show too late. If I bust that, then that's it. But maybe I'll start off badly, go down to 6K, run it back up, and then I will get 200-something place and bust against jacks. Wouldn't shock me. By the way, today, on my first bullet, I thought I was having a big comeback because I got all the way down to 1,900, and I ran it all the way back up to almost 11K. And in fact, had I won the hand I was all in with, I actually would have been up to 25K. You started with 20, so 25 is not wonderful, but that's pretty damn good from 1,900. And both bullets today busted when I got it in good on the flop and got rivered. One of them, ace-queen overcards, got it in with me when I had top pair of tens, and top pair of nines it was. And he ended up on the river getting a queen via the ace-queen. And the other one, I had top pair of tens on the flop, and the guy had a flush draw, and he hit the flush on the river. So, 2 river beats when I got it all in on the flop ahead. The first one I was way ahead, second one I was somewhat ahead, and both knocked me out. Never had a lot of chips with either bullet here. I know some Poker Fraud Alert radio listeners played today. Matt the Rat, who I went to dinner with, he was doing well at one point. He had 115K shortly after the dinner break, and then he lost a 50K pot flip. Then he lost the next few hands, and he ran into pocket jacks when he shoved when he was short, so he's out. That's unfortunate for him. And Vintage One, I don't know if he's still in, but he was doing decently coming into the dinner break as well, but I didn't see him at dinner. So, look we're talking about. Speak of the devil. Matt the Rat, I was just mentioning you. It's unfortunate to read what happened to you.
Yeah, it sucks. It was. Oh wow, there's feedback.
There is feedback. What's going on here? You want to hang up and call back?
I don't know. On my phone.
Yeah, just call back.
Yeah. Okay.
Vintage One bagged about 30K, so he's short stacked, but still got a shot. Now we can't even get Matt on here. Let's try to call him. Yeah, I can't even reach him now.
Hello?
Oh, there we are. No, we have you now.
Okay, no feedback now.
It's weird because it shows you're not on here. This is so weird. It shows we're not connected, but then you're here with me. It's really strange. It's like you're in my head. It's like I'm talking to a ghost.
Yeah, so you can hear me then, right?
I can hear you. Everything's fine. It just shows that you're not on with me.
Yeah, no, it was. The tournament was pretty good. I was similar, kind of like you were talking about. I was down to 6K at the end of the third level, and then I ran it up, and I had a big hand where some guy I led, and then a guy called, and then he jammed for 45K, and I had kings, and I won that. And then I was sitting at about 115K, and the hand that started my downfall, a guy limped. I think the blinds were 1,500. A guy limped, and I went 7K. And then the lady beside me, who's pretty solid, she had 45K. When I said 50K pot, I meant 50K each, roughly. Oh. So she rips it. And I go, there's no way it's aces or kings. She would have re-raised. And I go, it's got to be a flip. And even if I lose, I still have a reasonable amount. And if I win, I'm doing like I'm playing to win, right? I'm not playing just to fold queens pre-flop. So anyway, she won that. And then I lost 3-4 hands in a row with ace, king, king, queen suited, and pocket nines. And then the hand that did me in folds to me on the button when the blinds were 2K. I had, 28K, so 14 big blinds. I shove, and the big blind wakes up with pocket jacks. And he flopped a full house, too. Yeah. So that was it's a little demoralizing. I'd rather be struggling all the day with 20, 30K and then go out than have a big stack and then lose it all within half an hour.
No, I agree. And that was my case here. I was struggling the whole day with 20K type things. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that was too bad because I'm pretty sure if I'd won that flip, I'm pretty sure I definitely would make day two. Probably good chance for the money, but I'm not sure. You're playing tomorrow, right?
I'm playing one bullet tomorrow. If that doesn't work out, I'm done. And in fact, I'll give you guys a little heads up. Don't look for me in other events after this until the main, because if this doesn't work out, I'm leaving town. I'm out of here. I'm come back for the main.
Yeah. The one thing too about playing so long, like there was only 20 minutes left of the day when I busted. It's that I put in such a long day. I'm kind of tired.
Yeah.
Like, right? And so now you got to get up early, shower, go eat, and then I don't know. That's I'll probably end up playing just because I'm here. But so I don't know. Maybe we'll sit at the same table. Or how is Vintage One doing?
He bagged $30K, so he's coming in short stack day two.
Yeah. I mean, I could have folded my way into, day two with like 28K, but I mean, God, folds me on the button with a pair with, 14 big blinds. So anyway, that's it. So anyway, yeah, that's it. So I'm assuming you're not going to do a long show.
Well, I hope not. Otherwise, I won't get much sleep. But yeah, I'm going to try to speed through this.
Yeah. Okay. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. Well, you going to play? You going to play? You're not sure yet?
Most likely I'll play. I'm going to see how I feel in the morning. Most likely I'll play. I don't want to buy my ticket now, just on the off chance, because there's always so many people in there. There wasn't a lot of coughing. Like, I didn't see anybody that had COVID symptoms, but there's a few people coughing, and you just never know if you wake up and you're not feeling right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Yeah, and though I will say though, COVID takes more than a day to develop like that. You're going to get symptoms usually 2 days after, not one.
Well, I know. Remember, I got it 2 years in a row. The last 2 years I've been here, I got it.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure in the morning that I'm feeling fine. I don't want to spend $1,000 and then feel real crappy and like have to gut it out.
No, I agree. No, I actually haven't registered yet either, so I'm going to just go down and do it in the morning.
And I noticed too that like right now the cage for buying in the Horseshoe is closed. They close that early. You have to go to Paris.
Yeah, they do close the Horseshoe one early. That's true.
Yeah. Okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Talk to you later, Matt.
Yeah,
Bye. It's so weird that I can't see that he's on here. So I'm playing tomorrow, one bullet, putting $1,000 more bucks into this thing, and if it doesn't work out, then that'll be that. In case you're wondering, has there ever been a World Series of Poker where I did not cash? Well, yes, but with an asterisk. That was the 2021 World Series of Poker. I came only for the main, and I didn't cash, but I came 50 from the money, which is super close. But that was only one event. I played one event and came very close to cashing, and it didn't. That's the only year I played and did not cash. Every other year I've played since 05, I've cashed. So far I'm batting zero here, and I've got one last shot there with the Day 1B of the Seniors, my final bullet I'm going to put into it. Otherwise, it'll be up to the main event. Last year I was also off to a bad start and went into Day 1B of the Seniors without a cash yet. And then, as I told you, I cashed there pretty deep and then cashed in the main fairly deep. So overall, the World Series was pretty decent for me. Not great, but decent. Okay, let's move on. Enough about me. Let's talk about some general World Series of Poker stories, some which I'm sure you have heard about. Let's talk about something that occurred at an event where I played. This is the Mixed Omaha. And in the evening, I heard some kind of commotion across the room. Now, there were two sections they were holding this Mixed Omaha in the Paris. One was the black section, and the other was the purple section. The purple section is way down there. It's kind of up against the wall. A lot of times they'll hold 10K events over there. So it was the black and the purple. I eventually got moved to the purple. That's where I busted from. But at the time, I was at the black section, and I heard some yelling over in the purple section, but it was hard to hear exactly what was going on. It sounded like that's really what it sounded like, and kind of sounded like a woman, but I wasn't sure. And it was kind of hard to see what was going on, but I saw there was a lot happening. There's a lot of commotion. People were standing up to try to get a view of what was going on from the black section, looking over there. And then they walked out some woman, so it was a woman, but the exact details of what occurred were not known yet. However, they're known now, or at least mostly known, and I have a video of it. And in fact, on Alan Kessler's YouTube, I don't know if he took this video or if someone else took it and gave it to him. I know he was close to it. He may have even been at the table. So maybe this was his video. But anyway, I'm going to play you the video of most of this freak out of this woman who looks about 60 years old. She has like a mean look to her, too. When you hear her and you picture what she looks like, she's probably exactly what you're picturing. I'll just tell you that. She looks exactly as she sounds. She looks like this mean old woman. And I'm going to play it to you. And I'll stop it every so often to comment.
You're going to arrest me? You're going to throw me out of here?
Screaming doesn't make
You want to arrest me and throw me out of here? It's my call. I'm in this tournament. I paid for it.
$1,500. You keep talking about how much
I am not going to. I've done nothing wrong. I've done nothing wrong.
Okay, so you're going to hear this over and over. I've done nothing wrong. I've done nothing wrong. So basically, she is of the belief that she is the victim here, that people have been harassing her, and that nothing's been done to them, and that therefore she's not accepting a penalty, she's not accepting disqualification, she's not accepting anything, she's just going to stay there and play her hand. So apparently they were trying to give her a penalty here, and she was refusing to leave, and then it escalated.
I've done nothing wrong.
Doing 3 chips.
I'm playing my hand.
Where's the...
He's being verbally abused. And nobody's doing anything about it. I mean, harassed, I mean, threatened. I mean, security's being called on me. I haven't done anything wrong.
So this is already further into the whole thing. So this isn't when they're trying to give her a penalty. They have already told her that she needs to get up, that they're disqualifying her and they're calling security to get rid of her. And instead of just saying, all right, getting up, and you can argue later, you can argue with the floor or whatever, she is saying, I'm playing my hand. And she's sitting here trying to play the hand. She's trying to keep playing the tournament. That's not how it works, because tournament chips have no value. So you can think whatever you want that you're going to keep playing. It's up to the casino to decide if you have qualified for any money you win. So you can't decide for yourself that they've disqualified you, you're going to keep playing. Because even if they don't throw you out, they just won't pay you. So it's the dumbest thing to sit there and refuse to leave when they're telling you that you're either being penalized or disqualified. And I have had times where I have had issues with something that's happened, and I've raised an objection, and I get an answer I don't like, and then I just go on. There's been times I don't agree. There's been times I've been screwed. And I do not create a huge scene. And I do not refuse penalties. I mean, it's the dumbest thing you can do. But she just thought by sitting there and saying, I've done nothing wrong, and just keep playing that it's somehow going to be okay. So you can see a floor man in the background on a walkie-talkie calling for security to remove her. Let's hear how this continues.
I got 9 people berating me. I'm not allowed to stick up for myself. I've done nothing wrong.
Sir, I wouldn't know I just awarded him.
I have done nothing wrong.
No, ma'am, I'm from security. Unfortunately, you're being asked to leave the table for hours.
And I'll sue this place. I will sue you for discrimination. That is what's happening.
Because your behavior being last.
It is not my behavior. It is their behavior, and it's not being properly policed. This guy's cursing. These people have been cursing. They all have been making fun of me and berating me. They've all been harassing me. I haven't done anything wrong. I've done nothing wrong.
So it's getting really loud here, as you can tell. It went from an angry tone of voice that was at raised volume to now outright yelling, I've done nothing wrong. I've done nothing wrong. They're berating me. I've done nothing wrong. Like she's screaming now. And obviously this is a huge disruption to the tournament, not just to her own table.
I play by the rules. I don't do anything wrong.
As she pounded the table. Boom.
Yes, ma'am, we're going to be trespassing a female.
Okay, let me stop right here. Did you hear that in the background? That was the floor man saying, we're going to be trespassing a female table 136. So what they're saying here is that security's going to come. They're going to take her out of the tournament, and if she refuses to stand up, they'd forcibly remove her. That didn't happen, by the way. She didn't get forcibly taken away, but had she refused to get up, they actually would have picked her up forcibly. The floor man is not going to do that. That's security's job. But basically, security is being called in to not just remove her from the event, but to actually kick her out from all Caesars properties and read her the trespass warning that if she comes back on any Caesars property, she will be arrested. So this is much worse than a disqualification. This is a trespass.
No!
Now!
Why would I refuse to leave?
We're losing all this time, too. Like, I want to get on with it. Come on.
So she hears about the trespass from behind her and realizes what's happening. So at that point she yells, "Now!" and pounds the table and says, "When did I refuse to leave?" Well, we don't see that on video, but from what I heard, this all started when she was causing some kind of disruption there, got a penalty for it, and then wouldn't accept the penalty, and then it escalated from there.
Drag her ass out of here, please.
So I am
So I don't think she understands she's actually being trespassed, but she does understand she's being disqualified. She's like, "You're kicking me out of the tournament?" No, you're being kicked out of all Caesars properties forever.
You're kicking me out of the tournament. Okay. Are you kidding me?
Button's gonna be moved, guys. All right. Dead button.
So then the button moves, and she's supposed to be the small blind, and they will not let her post the small blind. They just say that anything she puts in is going to be ignored, and it's just going to be one big blind, as if she busted.
Here. I'm sorry, not a dead button. One big.
That's insane. That's insane.
All right, here we go. Good luck, everybody. Have a great time.
Throw it out of this tournament.
She just stood up now. She said, "That's insane, that's insane," pushed her chip tack down, and then is now shouting at the top of her lungs after standing up.
I did nothing wrong. Nothing. This whole table is ganging up on me. I spent $8,000 to stay here. You've been harassing me. You got 9 people harassing me. Why don't you take anything to them? Why is this acceptable? Talk in the hallway. I spent money to be here.
Now, the floor man's trying to get her to talk in the hallway. The reason that he's trying to do that is to try to stop the disruption to the event. This way, in the hallway, security can just take her away rather than have all this occur there. So that's why he's like, "Oh, let's go talk in the hallway." What that really means is get the hell out of the tournament area, and then we can have security grab you there.
One big pack? Is it one big pack?
She's still just standing there. She won't leave.
How come nobody else understands why I'm upset?
Oh, the chip's got to come out.
Kicking me out here for what? I haven't done anything. I got nothing to lose.
I got nothing to lose. That's not a good thing to say in a casino. When you're being kicked out, you don't say, "I've got nothing to lose." A guy approached her, I think is security, but he's not in a Caesars outfit. That's what I don't understand. He seems to be like in a plainclothes type of outfit, and I don't understand exactly what his position is. It's a big black guy, but he's talking to her, and then at the end he's seen walking out with her. So maybe he's some kind of undercover security, I don't know, but he's coming over there to talk to her. You can't really hear what he says.
They're checking this whole thing up against me. No, they are all allowed to yell, but I'm not. They're allowed
Next
to make
hand,
fun of me
please.
like that.
We already lost about 30 minutes with the play.
What have I got to lose? What have I got to lose?
All right, man.
What are you going to do? What have you done already?
Property I hereby advise you.
Spread me out of this whole fucking thing. I worked my ass off. I had nothing to show for it. But you guys are over the fucking asshole.
People are clapping as she's being walked out.
Can I sue for hearing damage?
Yeah, she says, I something my ass off. I got nothing to show for it. I don't know if she said I played my ass off. I worked my ass off. I think she's trying to say that she was doing okay in the tournament and now she has nothing to show for it, but she's just being kicked out. I think it still hasn't sunk into her at this point that she's actually been trespassed from Caesar's property. You can even hear the floor man starting to give the trespass speech to her. So she's going to have that rude awakening, and she threatened to sue them, but that's not going to work. They not only have this video, but they also have video within their security system, and I'm sure they can show that she was acting like a nutcase and being a disruption and was disqualified for that reason. And then they have the option to trespass her at any time. Now, where there's a potential gaming violation, I'm not saying there was one here, but where there's a potential gaming violation is when someone pays for a poker tournament and you trespass them in the middle of the poker tournament, unless they've done something fraudulent to enter. So they trespassed a guy years ago who had been previously banned from Caesars and registered under a fake name. They, of course, can trespass him there in the middle and confiscate his stack. But if you have somebody that's banned in the middle of a tournament for something unrelated to behavior in the tournament or unrelated to their current behavior, so let's just say they decide they don't like somebody. I'll give you a good example. Last year, Eden Rocks was in the middle of a tournament, and they decided they're getting rid of him. Remember we had Eden Rocks on this show? So I think they just thought he was kind of disruptive, and I think that some people who had some influence also pulled some strings to get rid of him. But whatever. He was banned from Caesars Properties, but he was also in the middle of a tag team tournament. So they did let him finish it out, but had they said, well, you're banned because of past behavior that we didn't ban you for, but we've reviewed since then, and we're banning you now, just because we think in the past you were disruptive, like last week, a few days ago, and now we're getting rid of you, they couldn't get rid of him in the middle of an event if they let him register for this event. They can't then decide in the middle of it, oh, you know what? 4 days ago you did some stuff we didn't like, we're getting rid of you. They can't do that. They have to let him finish it out and then trespass him. So in that case, such a person who were to get trespassed could raise an issue with Nevada Gaming. In this case, she probably couldn't. I mean, she could raise the issue, but I don't believe she'd win, because they do have a right to remove and trespass people who are breaking the rules or causing a major disruption. They would be on much shakier ground if they banned and trespassed someone who just was acting in a way they don't love, but isn't a major violation of any kind. Like just someone who is complaining about a floor ruling and then gets back in his seat and keeps saying, that ruling was so stupid, man, that floor man was stupid. Like, you know, as long as he's not too obnoxious and too loud about it, if they ban him from the event in the middle, he could claim that this isn't fair because he's in the process, basically, of having the result of his bet show. Because if you think of a tournament, you're placing a bet when you register, and you don't get your results until you're out of the event or win the event. So if you're banned in the middle, then you're not getting your result, and your bet is basically being confiscated by the casino. And even if they give you a refund, that still isn't always fair, because what if your equity in the event is much higher than the buy-in of the tournament? So they have to be careful about banning people mid-tournament. But in this case, it should be fine. So she can say she's going to sue them, but she'll never get a lawyer to take this case on contingency. I don't know how much money she has. She said she spent $8,000 to stay there so far, which is pretty crazy because, like, this was mid-June. So for 2.5 weeks, she spent $8,000 there. I mean, was she staying in a suite? I don't know. That's not a very good deal. But who knows? Maybe she's exaggerating. Maybe she has a lot of money. I don't know. Maybe she'll waste money on an attorney to sue them. But, you know, Caesars doesn't care. They've got in-house attorneys, and they'll fight it, and they'll win. So she doesn't really have much recourse here. But you always get some weird thing happening every World Series. She really is putting on a clinic of how not to act at a tournament. You always accept your penalties, whether you agree or you disagree. I mean, I had an awful penalty 14 years ago at the main event. On day 6 of the freaking main event, I exposed my cards to the big blind because with all the junk they put on the table to advertise, I missed the fact that somebody had called a raise. So under the gun raised, someone called. I didn't see the call. It folded to my big blind. I thought it was just me and the raiser, so I thought I was the last one to act. I turned over my 8-5 offsuit to show I'm folding and just, you know, show I had junk. And then it turned out there was a second player in the hand. So, okay, it was a mistake. It was obviously a mistake. I had not done anything like that before. I had never received a warning for anything like that ever at the World Series. And a penalty was called on me, and I was out for 20 minutes. They put me out for 20 minutes, blinding off when I was semi-short stacked on day 6 of the main event. Terrible. And strangely enough, this same thing happened to Theo Tran, almost identical, at like almost the identical time by coincidence. That was a horrible ruling. I was very unhappy. I was arguing with him about it, but I wasn't refusing to get up. And I said what I thought of it, and then, I had to take the penalty. Because they told me I had to take the penalty, and that's it. I had no recourse. So, yeah, sometimes you get unfairly penalized. I don't think she was unfairly penalized. I think she probably was causing a disruption and didn't realize it. I think she was probably obnoxious to everyone at the table and created confrontations with people there, and then they probably warned her, and then she probably didn't listen to the warning, and they probably penalized her. That's probably what happened. Just seeing her behavior in this 3.5-minute video really makes me believe that she was not the rational one at the table who's being picked on. It just does not sound likely to me. So this is obviously a person with some issues, and she will not be back at the World Series because she's been trespassed, and I do not think they'll be letting her back in given the big scene that she made there. Moving on, I have 2 different scammer winning bracelet stories from the World Series of Poker. It's not good news here when 2 different people win bracelets in 2024 who are accused of past scams, but this has happened apparently. The first one is named Brent Hart. I hadn't heard of him before. Brent Hart won the $5,000 No Limit Hold'em WSOP event. Actually a pretty tough event. However, 2 years ago, on July 19th, 2022, an individual named Elvis Tumas, Elvis exactly as it sounds, Toomas is his last name, Elvis Tumas, called him out for scamming. This is what he wrote. Again, this is 2 years ago, but just in case you think maybe this got resolved, it has not, because Elvis was reiterating his complaints when he saw that Brent Hart was at the final table and then eventually won the event. This is what he wrote in 2022. Let me preface by saying it's unconventional for me to call people out on a public platform. However, given the current climate and overwhelming trend of routine debt accumulators in the poker world, I refuse to keep concerted stealing confidential. Here's a name you should all be cautious of, Brent Hart. He borrowed $1,000 from me on February 17th, that is 2022, at which time he was deep in the Venetian 2500 event and promised to pay me back in full the very next day after he cashed. He went on to finish in second place for over $166,000. Rather than settling his debt, he left Vegas and went home to California. I waited 2 days before reaching out, and he said he, quote, forgot and will take care of it when he's back in town next week. The next week comes, he's got no money and no communication. He's changed his number and forgets to give it to me. After confronting him at the Wynn 10K event, yes, he had 10K to buy in, but can't settle the 1K he borrowed, I got every excuse in the book. Fast forward a few months, I run into him in Florida, at which time I get the I'm Broke song and dance, and finally sends me $500 via Zelle while firing several bullets in all the events there. Brent has fired 10Ks, 5Ks, 2,500, and so on. Word is that this is what Brent does, borrows money and doesn't feel like he needs to pay it back, intimidates people into not coming out or confronting him. Let's normalize calling out stealers and oversellers so no one else falls victim. By the way, an overseller is someone who sells pieces of themselves and actually sells more than 100% and loses on purpose. I don't know if he thinks Brent Hart did this too, but he's definitely saying that Brent Hart borrowed $1,000, cashed big, dodged him. He finally confronted him and got $500 out of him and never got the rest. He said, whether it's $10 to $10K, your word should be your bond in the nature of this business, and it's not right for people to consistently get away with stealing with no recourse. This is $500. That's all that's owed at this point. So then on June 8th, 2024, he quote tweeted the WSOP's tweet about Brent Hart winning the bracelet at the 5K 8-handed no limit event. Elvis wrote, betting line at minus 1,200. This fool is dead broke within 2 weeks. Heard he was at the craps table during one of the final table breaks, and then he put a clown emoji. So presumably Brent Hart did not pay him back. That's crazy. Over 500? I mean, you got to think this is just something pathological if this is true. I mean, even if the guy's got a big gambling problem and just goes to the craps table and shoots off his money as soon as he wins it, you got to think he would pay back 500. But maybe he's got so many people after him for owing money that he just feels like, why satisfy one debt? I'm going to have a ton of people after me, so I'll just let myself be known as a scammer, whatever. So, interestingly enough, it's only this Elvis guy calling him out. Brent Hart looks kind of intimidating. He's like this muscular black guy, so maybe some people are afraid of him. That's what Elvis Tumas is saying, that he intimidates people. He hasn't described in which way he does it. But Elvis is like, nope, I'm not intimidated. I'm going to keep calling him out. And he's continuing to call him out here in 2024, 2 years later. The fact that he's owed $500 and can't get $500, not $500,000, $500 is insane. This has to be just where he's just not wanting to pay. It can't be can't pay. It's just not wanting to pay. Could be spite. Could just be he owes so many people he just feels it's useless to pay anybody. In case you're wondering what Brent Hart cashed with that bracelet win, it was $660K. So for sure he could break off a $500 out of that $660, $284 that he got. He could still have almost $660K if he paid the $500. My goodness. So, we don't know for sure this is true. Brent Hart has not responded and denied it, and I don't think Elvis would be going on and on like this if he was not really owed this money. So that's pretty bad. So definitely do not lend money to Brent Hart, even if he shows you that he won a bracelet and $660K in 2024. A more complicated scammer who wins a bracelet story involves a player named Antonio Galiana. And this one is more involved in several ways. First of all, he came to public awareness not so much for winning the bracelet, because people are winning bracelets every day here, but because he pulled off a very big bluff heads up for a bracelet. So take a listen to this. This is footage from Poker Go when he was heads up for a bracelet. So it's 7-5 offsuit for Galiana, and his opponent has Jack Deuce offsuit. The flop comes 10-6-3 all clubs. They've both missed it. Both don't have a club. Galiana does have a gut shot straight draw. This Gilbert guy has nothing. Jack Deuce off. So this hand should really just be over. Whoever bets should win. It was limped in. So it goes check on the flop. The turn is now
clubs on the turn.
An 8 of clubs. So this puts 4 clubs on the board. Again, neither of them have anything. Jack high versus 7 high. So it checks to the river. So the river now is 10-6-3-8-2 all clubs. So it's a flush on the board. Neither of them have a club. So obviously they're both playing the board.
River.
So you'd think normally this should go check, right? Remember, this heads up for a bracelet. So Galiana puts 900 in, 900K. The pot was 1.2 million from the limping and checking pre-flop. So you'd think, okay, he's going to take it down here. Galiana just bets, flush on the board. You think he's going to take it down, or if Gilbert thinks that he's full of shit, maybe call him and play the board, maybe put him in raise and see if he folds.
Flop, check, turn.
So this Gilbert is thinking what to do here.
Viral have
it's land. As played, seems like we would have heard from a club by now, whether it was the flop or the turn, and that's from either opponent. Now Galiana leading for 900, sizable, trying to clearly pick this pot up while both players are chopping, and I think Yo Viral is sensing and understanding that.
So this Gilbert guy is also known as Yo Viral online. That's why they're calling him Yo Viral.
What would he have played?
So he's thinking about what to do here. He's thinking is this a BS bet? So he's deciding it is a BS bet.
A little theft from Galiana, and now Johan simply cannot call. If he wants to win, he's going to put in a raise and does just that.
And that's what he does. A small raise.
So Gilbert puts in a raise of 1.95 million. So it goes from a $1.2 million pot that was checked down, 900K bet, and then he raises to 1.95 million. So now it's back to Galiana. Again, neither have anything, but both are playing the board. Galiana has to call another million to chop this.
Call it Jack 9.
Or he could try to re-raise if he thinks that's a BS raise.
Would he really not have bet a flush on the turn?
So Galiana's thinking.
And there's just simply no way for Galiana to call, right? The only decision is, okay, I could raise, or excuse me, I could fold now, or I could raise once more. This is very bizarre. It's a game of chicken between both players. Who will jump out of the way first?
I think next time I have the ace of clubs in this spot, I'm going to check it down and then let this happen.
Right now.
Oh my goodness, he does raise. Nobody has anything.
So Galiana
makes it
puts it to 6.3 million. So that's a big raise. Now Gilbert will have to call 4.35 million just to chop.
0.3 million.
Or he could try to re-raise at this point.
I mean, is Johan really going to see through this? The 3-bet on the river.
This would be some
I
kind
can't
of
fathom
outrageous.
him pulling the trigger and clicking it back. This would be one of the sickest plays we'd have ever seen.
So he sits for a while and thinks.
Oh,
Reaching,
oh my
announces
gosh.
raise.
Are you kidding me?
So he raises back.
How does he find it?
Can you believe this? They're raising back and
Makes
forth.
it 10 million.
So Gilbert now makes it 10 million and back to Galiana. Galiana has to decide, is this BS? Do I actually go all in here and try to get him to fold?
This is unbelievable.
Or do I finally give up?
Nobody believes.
This is why it's great if you have the ace of clubs here.
No, are you?
Galiana jams.
What?
Galiana goes all in.
Final level
What?
of that game has been reached.
What is happening?
No way. No way.
So Gilbert folds.
That's one of the best bluffs in World Series of Poker history.
So yeah, interesting hand, right? They just both didn't believe it got checked all the way down and a flush on the board, so they both were raising each other, and finally it went from 900K to 1.95 million to 6.3 million to 10 point something million to all in from Galiana. And finally Gilbert is like, okay, I'm done, and he folds, losing 10 point something million chips in that whole attempt, which is about half a stack. That would have been really sick if he called it and then they chopped. But he felt at that point that he was just up against the ace, and that's that. That's the only. You're only doing that if you have either the ace or you have nothing. So that got a lot of attention. Poker Go tweeted it as, quote, one of the best bluffs in WSOP history with the head exploding emoji. So that's what Galiana was known for a short time until more of a story came out about him. This is the problem. A lot of these people, they have a past. So Galiana went on to win. This propelled him to beating Gilbert and taking down the bracelet. However, then a player named Jason Philpott, Philpott, Jason Philpott called out Galiana and, among other things, called people's attention to a thread on 2+2 from 6 years ago in 2018, which at the time accused Galiana and one other player of an elaborate scam in Spain. So Philpott said that he was one of the owners of a weird staking company called Team 651. Now, Team 651 tries to take the luck out of poker by staking players and then paying them based upon their actual EV, expected value, rather than their actual results. So this way these players can just play their best game and not freak out when they take bad beats. So basically what happens is that they send the hand histories over to Team 651, who's putting them in various events. And then Team 651 will calculate their actual expected value in these tournaments where they played. So if these players ended up becoming unlucky, Team 651 will send them extra money based upon what their expected value was in these events, even if they ended up getting unlucky and losing. Now, why would Team 651 do that? Wouldn't this cause them to go broke? Well, no, because it goes the other way too, where if these players have better than expected results where they do get lucky, they keep getting their money in bad and winning anyway, like the opponents I had today in the seniors event, then they get paid less. So they're getting paid only based upon their expected value, not necessarily what they win. Now, what they win is also figured into that too, because the further you get, then the further your expected value in the tournament is. And I'm not sure which calculations they're using or how they're figuring it out, but basically they're paying you on your equity in the big spots rather than how it ends up shaking out for you. So some players found this to be appealing. They didn't have to stress about bad beats, bad luck. If they played well, if they got their money in good, then they were going to get paid anyway. Galiana and another player named Raul de Vega Sanchez, remember these are both Spanish players, they joined Team 651, and they were sent $94K over, I think, about like a 12-month period where they were running way below expected value. So Team 651 wasn't sure what was going on here because they're sending all this money to Galiana and Sanchez just because they're really, really unlucky. And they're saying, hey, you know what? Something's weird here. These guys are just too unlucky. Like, why are these guys always running bad? Why are we always having to send them money based upon their losses where they seem to be getting in their money good? Well, the reason it took a while to suspect that something might be going on was that it seemed like everything was legitimate. See, the way they would be figuring out people's expected value was through what was called a PokerStars audit site, which PokerStars itself ran. I can't seem to find a way to do it now, but it was a site called Rational Web Services, rationalwebservices.com. Rational Entertainment is the owner of PokerStars, so this was their site, and somehow you could request an audit. I'm not exactly sure what an audit shows, but an audit of your play. Between the audit and the hand histories, that's how Team 651 figures out what to pay each person. And what they were being sent, what they were getting, seemed to add up. It just didn't make sense that these two people, Galiana and Sanchez, were just getting so unlucky where they had to receive $94K worth of payments for their bad luck. Well, finally, according to this Jason Philpott of Team 651, they looked into it and they realized that the audits that were sent were completely fake. However, and I don't know exactly how this was pulled off, but it turned out the audits they received from PokerStars were some kind of direct link to rationalwebservices.com, which made it look very legit. What these players would do is they generate their PokerStars audit and send them a link over to the Team 651, who would then click on the link and see the audit, and the audit indeed verified their stories. However, it was found when it was looked into closely that they weren't going to rationalwebservices.com. They were going to rationals with an S, webservices.com. Yeah. It was a fake PokerStars audit site made to look just like the real one. So what would happen is they would be sent the PokerStars audit information for these two players. They'd click on the link and say, yeah, that's Rational Web Services. That's the right site. Okay, the audit looks real. Everything looks good. These players are just really unlucky. We'll pay them. But it was a fake site with a very similar URL, rationalswebservices.com instead of rationalwebservices.com. That's what was being alleged. That's pretty clever. So what is being alleged is that Galiana and his friend Raul Sanchez were just sending hand histories and audits of tournaments they weren't actually in. They would see tournaments where other people would get unlucky and then replace their screen names with the actual screen names and then send this fake audit from rationalswebservices.com over to Team 651, who would believe they were playing, and then would pay them. On 2+2, Jason Philpott wrote, on September 18th, we initiated a conversation with the most significant offender, Raul, on Skype, asking about his current holiday in Spain, to which he was very responsive. Remember, Raul is his friend there. This is not Galiana, but it's the other guy who's accused of doing it with him. Team 651 then told Raul we knew he had faked his results for the previous month, not revealing the knowledge that he had done this for every month in which he's been staked, and asked him to send back the $13,000 that was in his bankroll immediately. So basically, they had just sent him $13K, and they said, hey, send back the $13K now. So they didn't want to say, we figured out you've been scamming us the whole time, because then he'd just pay nothing. They were hoping that he would send that back under the guise of believing he could still be staked by them, and then they'd come after the rest. Raul chose to deny the accusation and counter-threaten legal action through his family, whom he claimed were lawyers. He agreed to send back said bankroll on Sunday, September 23rd, 5 days away, this is 2018, when he returned to the UK from Spain. He feigned disgust and continued to protest his innocence and, quote, anger at the accusation despite being presented with the evidence. On that Sunday, September 23rd, Raul did not send the $13,000 back to us and refused to make contact. He's not been in touch since. We had contacted PokerStars during that week and made them aware of the unfolding situation with them. They responded by locking their accounts until the situation was resolved. Our latest reloads of $16,678 to Raul and $4,000 to Jack and Jazz 777, which I'll tell you about shortly, are still in the accounts and will likely take some time to be able to cash out. During this period, Antonio remained in contact, that is Antonio Galiana, the one who just won at the World Series, and agreed to try and pass long messages to Raul. Antonio was not aware that Team 651 had also discovered his fraudulent activity. He began to distance himself from Raul, claiming not to know him well, despite Raul and Antonio's close friend confirming that both players were living together and using a VPN to play on PokerStars.com and multi-accounting on the Galiana screen name on the Spanish version. So that was the first part of the allegation, that they faked these results. Then there's a second thing involving this Jack and Jazz 777 account. So Jack and Jazz 777 is another player who was part of Team 651. The real name of this player was supposedly Juan Jesus del Pino Campos. Now, it is true that there is a poker player named Juan Jesus del Pino Campos from Spain, and he does play on an account called Jack and Jazz. However, this account on PokerStars was not named Jack and Jazz. It was Jack and Jazz 777, had the sevens added at the end. So it was a fake account. So this person joined Team 651, claimed to be Juan Jesus del Pino Campos when it really wasn't, and received a $10,000 stake from Team 651, and then just ran off with it. So that is an additional thing that was alleged. I'm not sure how this was tied to Galiana and Sanchez, but they blamed them for that as well. So those are the allegations against those two. And by the way, in order to convince them that Juan Jesus del Pino Campos was really the one under Jack and Jazz 777, somehow they got a copy of the guy's passport and sent it over to Team 651 to initially establish the relationship, and they signed a fake contract. I guess it was a real contract, but a fake signature, and $10K was sent to the account, and then they ran off, and I guess $4,000 of it was recovered by PokerStars. The other $6,000 was gone. So this occurred 6 years ago in 2018 and had never been resolved. And then when Jason Philpott saw what had happened in this video I just played you of that big bluff, he's like, oh my God, it's the same guy. At first he thought maybe it isn't the same guy. He thought it may be a different Antonio Galiana, but no, it was the same guy. And he's like, oh, I got to bring the poker world's attention to this. So he did. And then after this started to go viral on Twitter, all of a sudden something happened. Do you think you can guess what happened at that point once this became a big story? Yeah, well, all of a sudden it got resolved after 6 years. So Poker News, which had done a report on this, got news from Jason Philpott, the one who made the allegation back in 2018 and made the allegation again in 2024. All of a sudden, he said the matter was resolved to everyone's satisfaction, and then he removed his own Twitter thread about it. So it sounds like Galiana paid up to silence the story. I guess he figured that given his bracelet, the money he just won, and the fact that he got some poker fame out of this from running, quote, the best bluff of all time, which I wouldn't say is the best bluff of all time, but it was a good bluff. So since he wanted to parlay this into something else in the future, who knows what it might be, maybe stakes, maybe notoriety, maybe sponsorships, whatever, he wanted to put the story to bed. So he probably contacted Jason Philpott and said, okay, let me make this right. Let me send you the 94K back. Or maybe he sent his portion of the 94K. Who knows? Maybe he paid off the whole thing. I don't know. But whatever it was, Jason Philpott was satisfied enough with it to delete the thread, which I'm sure was one of the conditions to receive the money. So Galiana probably went to him and said, okay, I know it's been 6 years. I'm willing to pay now. So if you'd like to delete this thread, I will pay you all the money. In fact, I'll send you the money first, and when I've sent it to you, can you delete the thread? Can you agree to delete the thread if I send the money? Jason Philpott probably like, sweet, I never thought I'd see this money again, so yes, definitely, and he got paid, and he deleted the thread. So that's that. It's been, quote, resolved to everyone's satisfaction. Now notice that Philpott is not saying it was a misunderstanding. He is not saying that Galiana was innocent. He is not saying there was any confusion here. He's just saying it was resolved to everyone's satisfaction, meaning he got paid. So he was very fortunate that Galiana got this attention. Because had he just won the bracelet, this may not have been enough to get paid. It's the fact that this was on Poker Go and then amplified by Poker Go when this big bluff happened. So it was really this big bluff, I think, that got Jason Philpott paid 6 years later. You can't even give credit to Galiana over this, that he's now paying his debt 6 years later after he's won some money. Because it's not like he ran to go pay Philpott after winning this bracelet. It's not like he won and said, okay, hey, I know I stiffed you 6 years ago, but I've got some money now, here it is. Like, I've had people before do this. I actually have had people who've owed me money for many years, and some have gone dark on me, and some have been even kind of flippant with me when I've tried to ask the progress on paying me back. Not huge money like this, but, you know, four-figure type money. And then one day they'll send it to me. One day they'll say, hey, I got some money, I got back on my feet, here's the money. Okay, you know, it's not handled perfectly, but at least I got the money at the end and I didn't have to do anything to force it out of them. They just did it eventually when they got into a better circumstance, which again is not right. You should be making payments if you owe money to people. But in this case, it was not Galiana just deciding it's time to pay. It was him deciding it's time to pay once he was blown up in public after he was getting a lot of good publicity for a big bluff that he did, and he didn't want that spoiling the moment. So I guess there really isn't much karma in poker, is there? If Antonio Galiana and Brent Hart are winning bracelets. Moving on, I want to talk about something weird that happened at the Mystery Millions event. The Mystery Millions event at the World Series of Poker is a very popular event that began in 2022. The World Series of Poker did not invent the Mystery Millions, but they have made it very popular. It was popular in other venues. It's really popular at the World Series. It was a big success in 2022 when they started it. Poker Fraud Alert listener Matt Glantz won the first $1 million bounty, which I'll explain in a second. And this is going to be a very big event for years to come, including this year. So the way it works is that it plays like a normal no-limit hold'em tournament on day one. And then on day two, and they've already hit the money by day two. By day two, when everybody's in the money, then whenever you knock someone out, you get a bounty. And the bounty can be anything from something fairly small, I'm not sure what the minimum is, all the way up to
$1 million.
So this year, they featured $2 million bounties. Because the bounties are a big range. As I said, small all the way up to $1 million. And this year they actually had 2 million bounties in there. The first $1 million bounty was won by a Ukrainian named Valentin Shabelnik. Valentin is spelled Valentyn. Shabelnik was spelled Shabelnyk. What people noticed when he won this bounty was that he was not very excited by winning it. And there were memes all over Twitter over it. One of them was really funny. It showed Alan Kessler really, really excited about getting a good dealer on Reese's peanut butter cups for $2. And then it showed Valentin Shabelnik with like a stone face after pulling the $1 million bounty. Not only did he sit stone-faced after winning the $1 million bounty, but he ran back to his table to avoid missing hands, because you're called up to draw the bounty envelope while the tournament's still running. So he was so concerned about missing hands after just drawing $1 million envelope. He's so worried that, oh my God, I'm going to miss one or two hands. And he sprinted back over there. And people were very perplexed by this whole thing. How could this guy be so unaffected by winning $1 million through this bounty, which, by the way, is equivalent to the top prize of the tournament as well? How could he be so unaffected to where he has to sprint over there to avoid missing one or two hands? He doesn't want to celebrate or stay around or anything. He just ran over. And then also, why was he never excited? So people really wondered this, and some people were making excuses saying, hey, look, not everybody is going to show a ton of emotion. Maybe this guy doesn't like celebrating because it's something he sees as like rude to others who didn't win it. Maybe he just doesn't like the spotlight on him. Maybe he was excited inside and just doesn't show much emotion outside. Maybe he's just not a very emotional person. So people had different theories. Now, by the way, the second winner, DJ Buckley, he was very happy. So he had a typical reaction to drawing the $1 million bounty, just like Matt Glantz had 2 years ago. But Valentin Shabelnik did not have the reaction at all people would expect. And people were saying the sprinting back so he doesn't miss hands is even weirder than the muted reaction to drawing the $1 million. You can, in fact, look for pictures of him online, if you Google his name, and you'll see he doesn't look that happy. He's holding up the $1 million paper there, and he's having a hard time forcing a smile. Finally, he cracked a tiny bit of a smile, but you can tell the guy just isn't that excited over the whole thing. The second guy, this DJ Buckley, he's lifting it up over his head. He looks very happy. But Valentin Shabelnik, he just looks like, okay, whatever, $1 million, let's go on. Got to get back. I don't want to miss hands. So there's a lot of discussion about this, how weird this was. And I was told a rumor. I want to let everybody know that this is just a rumor, but I was told a rumor. And this has not been publicized anywhere. So don't take this as gospel. Don't repeat this and say, oh, Dan Druff said this is the situation. I'm just saying that I heard this. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not true. I haven't verified it in any way. But this is what I heard. I heard that Valentin Shabelnik was staked for this event, and that he had been staked for a lot of events, and he was in a lot of makeup. Now, makeup is where someone is staking you, that is, they're putting up the money for you to enter the events, and if you're in the negative, that means that if you win something, that you have to fully pay them what you're down before you get paid any at all. So a simple example is if you're $150,000 in makeup, meaning $150,000 down on the stake, and then you hit a score for $180,000, and your deal with the backer is you'll get to keep 50% of what you win, you don't get to keep $90K here. What you'd actually have to do is first pay the $150K out of that $180 to the backer because you're down that in makeup, and then you'll split the remaining $30. So a person cashing $180K, who'd be $150K in makeup on a 50-50 deal, would only walk away with $15K, and the backer would get $165K. So sometimes these people with these big scores are not walking away with very much because there's so much in makeup, and that's mainly where the money goes, sometimes completely where the money goes. So let's say he was $200K in makeup and cashed $180K, that would be 100% would go to the backer. So this can cause people to play differently, where they start taking insane risks to build chips to basically either try to win the event or bust, because they figure they're so far in makeup they might as well. So when a horse gets way in makeup, sometimes it's better for the backer to drop them. Anyway, getting back to this Shabelnik guy, the story I heard was that he was very much in makeup and that the person backing him was Elke, Bertrand Grospellier. And that Elke agreed to back him on this event, which is only a $1,000 buy-in, but that Elke backed him in this with the agreement that any bounty he pulls will go 100% to Elke. So there's no split on that because he's in so much makeup. Basically, whatever you pull goes to me, Elke told him, according to the story that I was told. And, who's going to think you're going to pull the $1 million bounty? Even if you make day 2 and get some bounties, the $1 million, it's probably not going to go to you. So the story was that this guy said, fine, I'm probably not going to pull the $1 million, so whatever, sure, put me in. And then what do you know? He gets a bounty, and what do you know? He ends up pulling the $1 million, and then what do you know? Elke gets the whole
$1 million.
Isn't that interesting? Now again, not verified. That's what I heard. But that would explain why he just was not very excited. Imagine if this were you. Imagine if you were this Shabelnik guy, and you had this deal with Elke, and you knew that any bounty you pull will go 100% to Elke, and then you pull $1 million. And you can't admit it to people. You can't admit, holy, this is all going to Elke. So you're like, okay, whatever. I want to run back and play my hands and win the tournament itself for $1 million, because that I'm going to get a piece of. The bounty, I agreed, is going 100% to Elke, so of course he's not happy. It's not his money. He's not getting that money. So that would really explain both things, the lack of excitement and the desire to sprint back and not miss any hands so he could get a better result in the tournament itself. It all makes sense to me. So isn't that interesting? May not be true. May be true. Maybe partially true. But it would explain it. And this is not posted anywhere else on the web, to my knowledge. So that's why you should listen to this show. Because you never know what I'll come up with. Because I have conversations here. I'm here at the World Series of Poker. I have conversations with people. And they tell me things. Remember some years ago when Jared Blesnick got banned from the World Series for life and then got unbanned 3 days later. And people said, how did he do that? And I had conversations here, and through one of my conversations I found out, which was the correct story, that he got back in because Phil Hellmuth went to Jack Effel and asked him to do a favor for him and bring Jared back. And I put that out there. Then Poker News caught it, and they asked Jack Effel, and he admitted, yes, it was Phil who got him put back. So I was right. But I found that out because I talked to people here at the World Series of Poker. And that's why, if you want to hear things about the World Series of Poker, sometimes that you won't hear elsewhere, you should listen to this show. Because I actually come here, I talk to people, and sometimes I get the scoop that is not being said anywhere else. So I don't know if this thing about Valentin Shabelnik is true, but it sure as hell makes sense to me. Let me move on. Men the Master Nguyen is in controversy once again. He is someone who does not have a good reputation in poker, to say the least. He is known as an angle shooter. He is known as a cheater. He has a terrible reputation. And pretty much everyone knows it. All of these controversies he's been involved in involve allegations of either live poker cheating, chip dumping, angle shooting, and in addition, it's said that he berates dealers and is just a jerk. So not very high opinions of Men the Master. In 2018, Chad Holloway did an article about Men Nguyen, because he actually did an interview with them. And basically the article, which was fairly positive towards him, but the article did clear up one thing, and that was there was an allegation against him that he was caught with a suitcase full of tournament chips in his room at Foxwoods, and apparently that was an incorrect rumor. Because Chad Holloway checked with the tournament director at the time when this occurred, someone named Kathy Raymond, and she verified to Chad Holloway that this did not happen. And what had happened was that there is a fire alarm that went off because a roommate of Nguyen's was cooking in the room and caused the fire alarm to go off. So they had to go into the room to clear that out. And so the story went that when they cleared out the fire alarm in the room, that they found a suitcase of tournament chips, but she said that was not true. However, there's been a lot of different stories about him over the years, dating back to the 90s. One of them I remember is that he would have horses at the commerce tournaments who would dump chips to him, and that they were instructed in pots against him to always fold, to play back at him and then eventually fold. There was one horse who apparently didn't do it right, and it was said that when a horse raised and then he 3-bet them in limit hold'em, that the horse ended up folding, which is a huge mistake in limit hold'em. Like, you never fold to a 3-bet in limit hold'em because you're just calling one more bet. It just would never be worth it to fold mathematically. So this horse folded, and people took note because it was someone known to be associated and backed by men, and the person didn't understand that that's a very blatant way to dump chips. But the smarter ones would just play in hands with him, and then the river would fold when men would bet or raise, and this would be ways men would accumulate chips whenever he needed them. So that was one of the stories about him. A lot of stories over the years about him, one after the other, and they're not good stories. They're not ones that paint him in a good light. And it's one of these things, you hear this over and over and over again. There's no way that he's a good guy, and it's just been falsely accused of things, even if that Foxwoods thing wasn't true. So here's something that happened in 2024. And people are very frustrated. People are calling for men to be banned from the World Series of Poker for good. But so far that hasn't happened. Here is the story. A person on Twitter known as Smitty, which is Myth Poker, MITH Poker, wrote this. It was on June 10th. Trying to get this out there. 27 left in the Gladiator event. Now, the Gladiator event was a big field event, which is only $300 to enter. I'm under the gun with $4.5 million at 1 million big blind. So basically, he's saying he's very short-stacked. The big blind there is $1 million in chips, and he's only got 4.5 million chips total. So he's got 4.5 big blinds. So under the gun, he puts it all in with Jack 5 suited. Then the button raises to 10 million. Then Nguyen, who's in the big blind, goes all in. The button calls, and they both have ace-king. So that's good news for Smitty here, because it's Jack 5 suited against 2 ace-kings. That's the best he could have hoped for. So then a 5 hits, and he wins. Both ace-kings miss. A 5 hits, he wins a pair of 5, he triples up. So he's thrilled. He says, I go to the rail and have some fun. The dealer pushes 10.525 million my way. Now, at minimum, 4.525 million times 3 is 13.575, plus the ante and the small blind of 1 million and 500K respectively, so it should be 15.075 million. So he's basically saying he should have a little more than 15 million in chips after this, and he only has 10.5 million in chips. So something's very wrong. So he complains to the floor. He says, WSOP rules we will continue final 3-table redraw and play when they review footage. So basically, they're going to redraw the final 3 tables, which they do usually in these big events when there's 27 left. And then while they're reviewing what happened, they're going to make this guy play with possibly 5 million fewer chips than he should have, which is, of course, very big. He would have a 10.5 million stack instead of a 15 million stack. So they really should just have stopped it until they resolve this thing, because it's such a big difference. Then they pause the clock for 15 minutes, and the senior director gives me 2 million. So at least they paused the clock there, but then he says I'm still short 3 million. How is it that in 2024 we can't get this stuff right with all the tech at our fingertips? The dealer acknowledged there was an error, and we're dealing with a repeat offender in men. It was hard for me to compose myself and get my head on straight following the situation. Other players and spectators acknowledged how poorly this was handled. I'd love for someone with a little clout to comment on the matter. I'm a cash player. Is this common for tournaments? So then a video surfaced, a person who goes by Tilted Tay, Tiltedtay, posted 3 videos of the situation, and the second video involving men is very disturbing. So Men was one of the 2 who lost that hand with the ace-king, and this Smitty guy was the winner, and there's a third guy. And it seems very clear from the video that the reason that this guy got shorted in chips was because Men, the master, pulled his chips back after he lost. In this video, and I'm not going to bother playing it because there's really no sound of consequence here, but the first video shows the whole thing happening, and then the guy starts celebrating. In the second video, you can see that Men very quickly pulls his chips back. So Men put his 4.5 million out, or whatever it was. He pulled his chips back. He put all the chips back that he had put out there. He actually put out more than 4.5 million because he was raising a lot more. He went all in over the other guy, who then called. So he and the other guy tied. So that was presumably what Men thought he was pulling off. That if he was questioned, he'd just say, oh, I forgot. Yeah, I forgot about the third guy. Yeah, I was thinking that I tied the bigger stack with the ace-king, so I was pulling back the chips. Oh, I forgot about the third guy. Sorry about that. So while the guy with the jack-5 was celebrating, Men pulled his chips in, and that's right there on video. Right there on...
Paul, you got to appreciate that.
And I'm watching him right here.
Wanted someone to say that.
He's pulling them all back. He pulls all his chips back. And you can see they're all back in his stack. He's pulling them all back one by one. He put out stacks of chips. He pulled them all back in. So it's very incriminating. Very incriminating. Now, what's especially ridiculous here is the fact that apparently they didn't even take the chips from Men. I guess they took one of the million chips from Men and one of them from the other guy who had actually paid properly. So the floor somehow came back with the idiotic solution that Smitty was shorted by 2 million, not 4.5 million. And they said, hey, just each of you give 1 million. Men, you give 1 million, and third guy, you give 1 million. Even the third guy paid him properly. So the third guy got screwed too. So Men got away with underpaying him by 3.5 million. So this guy ended up being shorted by 2.5 million. That is pretty bad. The whole thing was bad. You have him right on video pulling back all the chips. Now, if this were a player who did not have the history of this and just kind of, in all the excitement, noticed his ace-king tied with the other guy and was pulling back the chips thinking, okay, we tied, I'm pulling it back, and forgot about the short stack all in that won, or thought that maybe the short stack was already paid from the main pot. Because what usually happens here is they have a main pot and a side pot. But it looked like what happened was there was never the main pot made properly, and Men just pulled his chips back. So given Men's history, you have to think this is intentional. He'll, of course, deny it. He'll probably say, yeah, I pulled him back in, but I didn't realize that I hadn't paid the other guy yet. I thought that was part of the main pot. I was just pulling back my chips because I tied with the other ace-king. But given his history, and given the fact that he's aware of what his chip stack is, and he should have known after that hand that he didn't lose anything. Wouldn't that be weird that you go in a three-way all-in and the short stack wins and you come back out not losing anything? How would that be? How would that be if you tied one guy and lost to the other? So he obviously knew that he had extra chips and said nothing about it. But it's much worse to do it on purpose than to get extra chips and just keep your mouth shut. Neither are good, but it's much worse to purposely pull back the chips. But in all this celebration the guy was doing, who won with a pair of fives, the Smitty, Men probably thought, hey, I'm going to pull them all back here and see if anyone says anything. And no one said anything. And then I don't know how the floor screwed this up. We're viewing the situation to where they just made Men and the other guy each give back $1 million when the other guy actually had paid properly. So that is insane. That's absolutely insane. Smitty said back to Tilted Tay, who posted that video, "Holy shit, thank you for documenting this. I'm still, of course, in shock at what happened, but you can see it clear as day. I'm owed apology from the WSOP at minimum." And apparently this video was taken by Tilted Tay's friend named Austin. That's how he got the video. Some people gave a hard time to Smitty. A person named Opus Dog Poker said, "I get the celebration," meaning I understand why you're celebrating, "but how are you leaving your chips unattended when you're literally sitting next to a known cheat?" That's really not the right thing to be asking. Now, the thing you can ask him is, when you've won like this, maybe make sure you get paid properly first before celebrating, before walking away and celebrating. It's not so much about the known cheat. It's more of just make sure that an error wasn't made. But the World Series mishandled this really badly. They should have just stopped everything, reviewed the footage, and then just figured out from the basic mathematics. This guy went all in with $4.525 million. He should have 3 times that plus the small blind and the big blind ante, which is another $1.5 million. That should have taken him to a little bit over 15. If he doesn't end up with over 15 there, they've got a problem. They've got to make sure he has over 15, and they've got to see where it came from. It's clear it didn't come from men. And I think they should just ban men. And that's what a lot of people think. Why? When someone who already has a reputation as a scumbag, as a cheater, as an angle shooter, and then this happens, you got to say, okay, enough is enough. We just can't tolerate this any longer. We can't give you the benefit of the doubt here. We just don't want you here. And who's going to complain here? He's not a popular player. He's a known player. He's not a popular player. So nobody's going to object if he were to be banned from Caesars Properties. If you were to be banned from the World Series, nobody would say, "Oh, man, you're being unfair to Man the Master." No, nobody would say that. And that's what they have to start doing. Not ban unpopular players. Not ban people because they say unpopular things. For example, Justin Bonomo, who pissed a lot of people off with all his anti-Semitic rhetoric and pro-Hamas rhetoric. Very disgusting stuff he wrote. Should he be banned from the World Series? Of course not. Because totally unrelated to his rants on Twitter. So people shouldn't be banned just because they're disliked or they piss off the wrong people. But anyone who's known to be a cheater, an angle shooter, anything like that, and then they're seen doing it at the World Series, they should be banned. And there's even an argument to just ban known cheaters, period. Because Caesars can do that too. Just someone who has a reputation as being a cheater and someone who is known throughout the community as a cheater. Whether from a long time ago, like Man the Master, or more recently, like Ali Imsirovic, as we'll talk about later. The World Series should just ban them. And I've talked about this before. Because no one's going to complain. It'll make the World Series better. It really will. I know it's a slippery slope, but they can just be careful about who they ban. They can make sure that certain criteria is met, that it's well known within the community that the person's a cheater, that the allegations seem likely to be true, or even more than likely, could be 100%, and especially if they've done anything shady at the World Series itself, get rid of them. Matt Salzberg retweeted himself from 2018. He posted this hand history. He said he can't stop. This was at the time, 6 years ago, about Nguyen. Said Steve Sung raises $75,000 for the cutoff. Nguyen calls from the big blind. The flops Jack 8. Nguyen checks. Sung bets $100,000. Men check raises to $215,000. Sung calls. The turn is at 6 of hearts. Nguyen bets $225,000. Sung raises all in for $435,000. Men calls, dropping in $200,000 blue chips, and Sung tables ace jack for trip jacks. However, the 2 chips that Nguyen had just called with are now back in his hand. You called, says Sung. That's why I turned over my hand. I no do nothing, says Nguyen. Mensky, you really trying this on me now? Asks Sung. We've known each other a long time. Don't pull this shit on me. I no do nothing, yells Nguyen. I bet 1,000. Meaning he'll bet 1,000 that he did nothing. And Sung says, I'll bet the prize pool on it. So he's saying, I'm so sure I'm right in this, I'll bet the whole prize pool. So then the tournament staff said they're going to check the cameras. I don't know what tournament this is at. Could be the World Series, could not be. Probably isn't. Men says, if you wrong, you apologize. Sung says, fine, you apologize if you're wrong. About 90 seconds later, Nguyen is informed that he did, in fact, drop the chips to call. You're wrong, says Nguyen, as he told to turn his hand over. Are you live, says Sun. I'm live, says Nguyen. He shows 9-7 for an open-ended straight draw, but he doesn't make it, and Steve Sung doubles up. This all happened on the turn. So basically, Nguyen called, and then as soon as he saw that he was in bad shape against Trip Jacks with his open-ended straight draw with one card to come, all of a sudden he's like, oh, no, I didn't call. Isn't that a shitty angle? He calls until he sees the hand that's turned over. And if it's one that he likes to be up against, then he'll say he called. If not, he'll pull the chips back and say he didn't call. So they actually had to check the cameras. So this is the type of shit that Nguyen does. This is something that Salzburg brought up 6 years ago. So yeah, the World Series just needs to start handing out bans for people like that, especially when they're doing things in the present. It's one thing to not ban him because he had a bad rep for what he was doing in the 90s and early 2000s, but he's doing this shit in 2024, just get rid of him. Moving on, there is a little controversy that Daniel Negreanu has started regarding a controversial ruling at his table. I'll tell you what happened. It's something I've never thought about before. Negreanu brought it up because he was actually in the hand. This is what he wrote. This was earlier today, 2:30 p.m., June 18th. Dumbest ruling I've seen in a while, and it happened to me. I limp 5K. Artur, I'm not sure who that is, makes it 13K on the button. Both blinds fold. He, meaning Artur, throws his hand into the muck. They rule the 5K stays, but the other 8K he gets back. Makes literally no sense, and it's an open opportunity to angle. Okay, so let me tell you what happened here, in case you don't understand Negreanu's tweets. So basically, Negreanu limped in for 5K. So that meant the big blind must have been 5K. And someone named Artur raises it to 13K. And then both blinds, the small and big, fold. So before Negreanu can act, he's next to act there. Remember, he limped and Artur is on the button. Before Negreanu can act, Artur thinks the hand's over because he just hasn't seen that Negreanu limped. Now, this probably happened because there's all this crap written on the table and it's sometimes hard to see the chips that are bad, especially if there's like a single 5K chip. So he probably missed the chip, thought he was just stealing the blind, saw the blinds fold, mucked his hand because he thinks the pot's coming to him. And then Negreanu's like, wait a minute, you just mucked your hand. I'm the last one with a hand here. Because he tells that to Artur. Artur threw away his hand. The blinds threw away their hands. The last person with cards is Negreanu, so he wins. I mean, that's obvious. It was a dumb mistake on Artur's part, but once you've thrown away your hand and it's unretrievable, meaning that it's gone into the muck and it's not clear which card is which, then the person who's remaining with cards, they get the pot no matter what. So there's no question Negreanu wins the pot there. But this is why he's angry here. He said that what happens is they only gave him 5K out of Artur's 13K, and the other 8K Artur gets back. So he said it makes no sense, and it's an open opportunity for people to angle shoot. So the point he's trying to make is that, let's say there's a limper, and you're on the button. So it goes limp, fold, 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 fold. You're on the button. And he's saying, well, why not just make a big raise there? Probably force out the blinds unless they've got a huge hand. Then if you think that the limper is going to call, then you can quickly fold and get everything back except for the initial limp amount, which isn't very much. So he's saying that's not a good idea. You can quickly muck your cards at that point and then get back most of your bet. So Negreanu said, it's just silly to cater to the player who made the mistake. Both blinds are affected as well, not just me. So he's very unhappy about this. He feels that since Artur put 13K into the pot and then mucked his hand, that the entire 13K should go to him, not just 5. The floor ruled that only 5 goes to Negreanu and Artur gets back the other 8. Now, why would the floor rule this? Well, it's because of a World Series of Poker rule, which is Rule 108, and also the poker TDA rules, which are used by tournaments all over the place. There's a kind of like standardized rules. They don't have to be used, but they're used in a lot of places that also state that this is what happens. So here's the TDA rule first, Rule 15B. It says, if a player bets then discards thinking they won, forgetting that another player is still on the hand, which is exactly what happened here, if the cards are mucked and unretrievable, which is what happened, player is out and not entitled to refund of called bets. If player initiated a bet or raise that has not been called, the uncalled amount will be returned. So that's the TDA rule. The World Series of Poker rule, which is Rule 108, is pretty similar. It says, if a dealer or participant kills or fouls an unprotected hand, the participant will have no redress and will not be entitled to her chips back that were wagered in the hand. If the participant initiated a bet or raise and has been called, the uncalled bet or raise will be returned to the participant. So there you go. They both basically say the same thing, that any bet of yours that matches what's already out there, and then you throw away your hand, then you've lost it. You can't get it back. But anything you put above that, you get back. So that's the rule. That's the rule. And even if Negreanu feels it's unfair, even if he feels it could be open to angle shooting, if that's the rule, that's the way it goes. The reason the rule is written like this is to kind of mitigate the damage from people making this mistake. So it's basically saying, look, if you accidentally throw away your hand thinking that you've won it, and you just kind of toss it away because you think the pot's going to be pushed to you, and then in reality someone's still in the hand and hasn't acted yet, so they win, that you don't have any recourse there, that you've lost the hand, and any bet that you've matched that other people have put out, you've lost that too. But if you've raised that bet, and nobody's called that raise yet, then you will get that back because there's no proof that that person would have called the raise. That basically the other person cannot get chips that they never matched. So I actually agree with that. I see Negreanu's point that people could use this to angle in the way I described. Someone limps, you make a big raise, you force out the blinds, and if it seems like that limper is grabbing chips to call, you quickly muck your hand and say, oh, I didn't realize this, and then just get back your original bet. But, I don't see people doing that. And if it starts becoming a problem, they can change the rule, or they could warn someone who's doing this. Like, there's only so many times people can get away with this, because this is not something that's going to happen all the time. Now, a way to prevent this from happening to you as the person who accidentally mucks, because Artur still lost the hand. It's not like he got away winning chips. He lost chips. He just didn't lose as much as Negreanu thought he should. But a way you can prevent this is just simply never throw your hand into the muck or to the dealer until you get pushed the pot. And that's what I do. Every time that a pot is supposed to be awarded to me, I do not give up my cards until the pot is being pushed to me. I don't need every chip in my hand, but I need to see the pot being pushed in my direction. Not just for that reason. It's also, you want to make sure it's going to the right person. So you don't want to muck your hand and then have the dealer push it to the wrong person. You go, oh, no, I'm the winner. And the person says, oh, no, I'm the winner. And then you have to argue. So you make sure it's going to you first before you give up your cards. They have to start pushing it in your direction. Then you can throw your cards. Or you can even wait till all the chips are pushed to you. So this Artur guy shouldn't have done that. What he should have done is waited until the pot was pushed to him, which we wouldn't have because it would have gone back to Negreanu to act, and then he would have thought, oh, crap, I didn't realize that someone's in the hand. And you don't even have to say that if you realize it. Like, I've had that before. I've had it where someone has limped in, and I have raised on the button trying to steal the blinds, not realizing there's a limper behind me. I'm thinking, okay, I won the pot, and why isn't it being pushed to me? Before I can say anything, I see the guy who limped calling. So I don't go, oh, man, I didn't realize this. Like, okay, but that's giving away that my hand might be weaker than I'm portraying here. Because raising to steal the blinds when nobody else is in the hand yet requires a weaker hand than raising a limper, typically, and, trying to steal the blinds. So when that has happened to me, I just don't say anything. I act like I meant to do that. And then I play from there. So that's really what Artur should have done, is if Negreanu called, just pretended like he meant to raise his limp. and then play on from there. Not just throw his hand in the muck before it's pushed to him. But yeah, Negreanu wasn't correct on this one. I know I had felt weird to him, and I've never had this come up before, but he's not correct. The rules back the decision. So the floor actually ruled correctly there. A problem started occurring this year that was not happening before, to my knowledge, at least not a big issue. And that is with max late registration being angle shot to where people are sitting down far after the registration period closes. So let me tell you what's been happening and how people are pulling this off. First of all, in some events, late registration is too late. Now, I don't like it. I don't like how late people can register in certain events where people fall pretty fast, and where by registering as late as possible, which is known as max late registration or max late regging, that you can come in with sometimes 70% of the field out, 75% of the field out, and then all you need is like one double, and you're probably going to get to the money. Now, it's not a very fun experience because you're short stacked, you've got to get it in pretty fast, and if you don't double, then you're going to be out, and your tournament will be like a few minutes long. But if you're playing like 60 tournaments at the World Series, you don't care about this. You're not really there for fun, you're just here to grind. So it doesn't matter if a few of the tournaments are very fast. So I do believe that this is an advantage to register as late as possible. I just don't do it because I enjoy actually the play. But from a pure EV standpoint, it is probably best to do that, at least at some events. And there's definitely people who've taken notice of that. Now, I always laugh at people who say, no, it's not an advantage because, if you come in late, then you're short-stacked, and you could have been beating all the fish who are probably busted by now by the later stages, and you're missing out on all that. You just come in short-stacked. And my response to that is wrong. Why? Because, number one, it's a big advantage to come in with a large percentage of the field out already, because you have avoided busting all this time by coming in late. And number two, if it really just requires like one hand to win your initial double and then you can just cruise into the money, then yeah, it's an advantage. And if you don't believe me, think about this. If someone offered you to register a tournament on the bubble, meaning one away from the money, would you? Even very short stacked? Of course you would. You'd be an idiot not to. You'd make a ton of money doing this in the long run. So now that we can agree that registering one off the bubble, or on the bubble that is, that would be very advantageous. What about the bubble plus one? So two people have to bust to make the money. Would that be a good time to register? Yes, of course. What about three? What about four? So answers are yes, 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 yes. Obviously, registering extremely close to the money would be a gigantic advantage even if you're very short stacked. Because other people will fall out. Sometimes you'll double and you won't be desperate anymore. You're just going to cash so many times there. And then sometimes you'll get really lucky and run it up and cash big. So placing yourself just before the money, even with a short stack, is a big advantage. Any sensible person would register there. If I could register on the bubble, I would do it. If you didn't do it, you're an idiot. So obviously, if registering on the bubble, one off the bubble, two off the bubble, three off the bubble, if that's all an advantage, and we can agree on that, then when is it not an advantage to register late? The answer is never. Now, you can make an argument that when there's not much of the field out yet, but those who are out are mostly the fish, that maybe it is better to register on time rather than a little bit late. Maybe that argument could be made, but definitely very late in the registration process when a lot of the field is out is an advantage for the reason I just said. However, the World Series is greedy and they want as many registrations as possible, so they keep this open despite that. One year, I think it was in a PLO event, someone had a bet that if they registered as late as possible and folded every hand blind, they could make the money, and they actually did. They almost didn't, but they like finished with like two tiny chips at the end and were like a hair away from busting, but they did cash. So they won the bet. I think it was at like a 1K PLO tournament. It fails the dandruff monkey test. The dandruff monkey test states that if a monkey can do it, then it's a bad rule. It's a bad event. They have to change something. So if you could train a monkey to register as late as possible and then sit him down and teach him to throw away cards every time, and that's all he has to do, and he can cash, then it's a problem. Then it's a bad event if a monkey can cash in it. What's been happening this year, the new thing this year, is that there started to be complaints that people were not sitting until like an hour after the late registration period was closing. And people are going, how is this happening? How, if they're closing the registration period after 6 hours of play plus the break, how is it that people are sitting down like an hour later? So what some angle shooting Nitty pros were doing, especially ones from Europe, is they were not only max late regging, but they also weren't getting in the line to get chips until the very, very end. Because after you register late, then you're directed to a late registration table where they verify that it's really you, and then they hand you your chips. So it's a two-step process. The seat you are given when you register late is not your real seat. You're actually given a fictional seat at a table that doesn't exist, and then you go to the late registration area, and you get your chips there. So what these players figured out is if it's an event that gets a lot of late registrants, that there's going to be a big line at the end for people to get their chips. So rather than get in that line when they're supposed to, right after they've registered, they register as late as they can, and then they just kind of stand off to the side and wait for that line to go down, and they're the very last people in line. And that line sometimes takes so long to get through that these people would be sitting down like an hour later. Or in some cases, would even come after the line has finished. And they say, we just got over here, sorry. So they were doing whatever they could to show up as late as possible. And again, because it's an advantage and they know it. And people were posting examples of this, showing the tournament clock and how late it was into the next level when people were registering. One time, almost an hour late, people were still sitting down with new chip stacks. Finally, the World Series of Poker took some action. And this is because there were so many complaints. On June 9th, they tweeted, a change regarding late registration for $10,000 and above events. Players must be registered and in line at the late registration table when late registration closes, or your entry will be voided and refunded. Please allow yourself time to register online or in person to ensure that you're in line prior to the start of the next level after registration closes. Now, first of all, this is only for $10,000 and above events. I don't know why they don't make this the rule for all events. The $10,000 ones are especially unconscionable because these are not big field events. So these people were just stalling. They would register late and then just not come over there for a while. So basically what the World Series of Poker said on June 9th is if it's a 10K or higher event, that if you are not actually in line to get your chips by the time late registration closes, then your entry will be voided and refunded. So you're not going to lose your money, but they're just going to kick it back and say, nope, you actually can't register for this event. Here's your money back. Goodbye. So it's basically saying allow yourself time to register online or in person to ensure that you're in line prior to the start of the next level after registration closes. Now, keep in mind that there's almost always, or maybe always, I said almost always because I don't know every single time, but I believe always, a break in between the end of the registration period and the next level. So you will have like 15, 20 minutes to get over there. But still, the official rule is that registration is open throughout that break. So it's usually 6 levels or 6 hours of play plus that last break, and then registration closes. So what the World Series of Poker is saying here is that we're not going to allow you to register at the very end of the break because you won't be able to get over to the late registration table in time, and if you don't, if you're not there by the time the registration period closes, then we're just going to kick back your entry and you will not get to play. You'll get your money back, but you won't get to play. So they're saying, give yourself at least a few minutes to get over there, because if you don't, we're not letting you in. Again, only for 10K and above events. Chris Brewer said, good rule change. Only question is what happens when someone busts near the end of level 9, referring to an event where the registration closes after 9. Are they given leeway, an option to register in Horseshoe, meaning if they're in the Horseshoe room, or are they unable to register? World Series of Poker said back, if the player can't get signed up and in line at the late registration table by the time the next level switches, they'll be voided and refunded. Players are more than welcome to set up a WSOP tournament account with Bravo to register online and print a ticket from the Fast Track ticket at Horseshoe. Chris Brewer said, okay, but if you bust the final minute or two at the last level, there's no rebuy? Sorry, but this seems pedantic, just likely to be an issue for someone. Does slightly affect strategy. I want to clarify what the ruling is. Now, for some reason, people are not bringing up the break. In fact, someone finally did. Someone named Jared Greiner wrote, there should be a break after the last level of registration, and this solves this issue, right? Yeah, that's what I would think. I've never seen it where late registration doesn't have a break that's involved, that the reg period ends actually at the end of the break, not the end of the level. So I think Chris Brewer's concerned that someone's going to bust on the final hand of the final level in the rebuy period and then not be able to get over there and back to the table in time is unfounded because there's a break there. It's like a 15-minute break minimum. So why not just do it then? So I don't think Chris Brewer's concern is really that valid for the reason I said it, because of the break thing. But here's my problem with the World Series of Poker solution. Number one, it should be for all events, not just for 10K and above events. I don't know why they're just making it that. Number two, it really shouldn't have to do with when you get to the late registration line compared to the late registration period. There is a timestamp on every registration. So there should be a rule that you have to get to the late registration line either before late registration closes or, if not, within 5 minutes of when your ticket was printed. Or if they don't think 5 minutes is enough to walk between Paris and Horseshoe, they can say 7 minutes. So that could be the rule. You have 7 minutes max to get over there if late registration is closed. If it is not closed, then you can take as long as you want. But otherwise, you have 7 minutes to get over there. And if you don't, then it'll be kicked back and refunded. That would fix the problem a lot more. And that would also fix the problem here, which they're not fixing, that in these big field events, again, this is just for 10K, which are not big field, this would still allow people in the events that are lower than 10K to just wait for that long late reg line to go down and be the very last ones to sit. Now you can say, well, someone's going to be the last one to sit, so why does this matter for the whole field? Well, for the field it doesn't matter, but it is giving an advantage to people who don't deserve it. So if you're not the last one to register, you should not be the last one in line. Also, they should start penalizing those who are seen dawdling around and purposely stalling. They can just make a rule that you can't do this. If you're going to do it in the late registration period, you're to walk briskly over there, and if you're seen repeatedly doing this and stalling, you're just going to be banned. And just make it clear. Apparently, this has become a problem this year because people started to realize that these tricks can be pulled. So I guess at the 10Ks, the biggest problem was that not so much there was a line and people were waiting to join the line, but that basically there was no line, and they would late register as late as they could, and then just sit around waiting and then stroll there 40 minutes later and say, oh, here, I'm here to register. Sorry, I got lost or whatever. And they'd give them chips. People always find angles here. Always find angles. But I think this proves my point the whole way that the late registration is an advantage. And that's why people are doing it. Final World Series topic, then we'll move on to other things. Cheater Ali Imsirovic is back at the World Series of Poker. He was first seen around the area, just around Paris, around the Horseshoe, wearing a face mask. A typical surgical type face mask that you saw a lot of people wearing during COVID, but that nobody wears anymore, except for Ike Haxton, which we'll get to in a little bit. But Ali Imsirovic was wearing a surgical face mask, and people were immediately saying that he's doing this in order to hide his identity. The problem is he's pretty well known, and he has a pretty distinctive face, so even just seeing half his face, it's pretty obvious it's him. So he was spotted, for example, in the $1,500 Monster Stack event, and a lot of people are unhappy to see him around here because he is a known cheater, a known multi-accounter. I actually played his whole stupid statement that he tried to make to justify everything he was doing and sound okay, and he just made the whole thing worse. Sounded like a fool. So he's very hated in poker for the cheating and multi-accounting he did and his very unapologetic, arrogant video trying to address it, which backfired badly. So people are unhappy to see him, but he is not banned from the World Series of Poker. And keep in mind, he was also seen on video looking at someone's hole cards, who was not hiding them very well. I think it was Paul Fua in a high-stakes game. This is, again, like Nguyen, just not a good guy. It's a guy who's known to be an angle shooter, a cheater, a multi-accounter. And yeah, at the World Series of Poker, he hasn't committed any known offenses, but nobody would cry if he were banned. He's known enough throughout poker as a cheater. He's even admitted to a lot of the allegations in that stupid video he did. He, of course, downplayed a lot of it, but he didn't deny all of it. He admitted some of it. So just get rid of him. It's so funny that he wears this mask. I don't think it's about his health. Especially he's wearing a surgical mask, which doesn't do you that much good, at least not with COVID. A surgical mask will help you with colds and flus. But I don't think that's why he's wearing it. He never wore one before. All of a sudden he's wearing a mask. I think it's because he doesn't want to be recognized. But yeah, the World Series of Poker just needs to start clamping down on people like that. Especially Nguyen, who actually did something that was pretty unethical and probably was cheating, with taking his chips back. I don't think it was a mistake. Right at the World Series. That should be it for him. But even Ali, why should he be welcome here? And believe me, I'm not someone who's a believer in canceling others or banning people for having an unpopular point of view or just generally being jerks. I don't think those people should be banned. In fact, there'd be people who would want me banned who don't like me, even though I've never done anything wrong here. So I wouldn't be one to believe that we should be the thought police and ban people for having opinions which are unpopular. But we should ban people who are known to be cheaters and angle shooters and general scumbags. They should be banned, and I think not only will poker be better, but I think most people would applaud this, especially if it's not done too often. If they start just banning tons of people for stupid things, yeah, there's going to be problems, but you just get rid of the Master, you get rid of Ali Imsirovic, you get rid of other known habitual cheating scumbags, and no one's going to say, hey, what happened to them? What about Ali? Why can't he play? You're not going to get that. All right, so moving on. Hope you enjoyed the World Series news. We're going to talk about some other stuff. I got in a Twitter debate about Ike Haxton again. I hate covering the same thing twice on this show, but this came up again on Twitter, and a lot of people gave me a hard time. And I'm sorry, I just can't go along with the point of view that a lot of people are trying to bring to me here about Ike Haxton and his mask. We discussed it not too long ago when Phil Hellmuth criticized Ike Haxton's mask, saying that he was doing it to angle shoot and to basically hide any live tells at these high-stakes events he plays, where every little bit of an advantage counts since you're typically against mostly very good players. And I actually agreed with Hellmuth that he shouldn't be allowed to wear that mask, though I did say that I believe Ike Haxton is an honest guy, and I don't think that he's doing this as a way to get an unfair advantage. I think he really is wearing the mask because he wants to wear the mask. I don't think the reasons are completely pure as far as health, but I don't think it's about getting an advantage in poker. Maybe he doesn't mind the advantage it gives him in poker, but I don't think that's what it's about. That's just my opinion. But we didn't so much debate that side of it this time. It was just more about the mask in general. So I'll tell you how this whole thing shook out, and then you'll understand how I got involved. So what happened was that Ike Haxton was commenting on something that Poker News showed. They had a video of Ike Haxton against somebody else at a table at the World Series. and Ike Haxton was wearing his usual big N95 mask that covers most of his face. So this is what Ike tweeted on June 15th, and he quoted the Poker News tweet. After most of my poker so far this year being Tritons in Europe and Asia, I had almost forgotten how mad American Poker News followers get when they see a mask. Hilarious thread. And so he shows the Poker News thread where a lot of people are giving him a hard time for wearing that mask, which I'm not even sure is a World Series of Poker event. It's some event, but it doesn't really matter. He's wearing this big N95 that he always wears at every single poker event he plays. Covers most of his face. Already caused some controversy. And the problem is, if you dare question him on this, you have people biting your head off. People get really angry. And I think people do have a right to question him on this for various reasons, which I'll get to shortly. But what I wrote back, I didn't write anything too rude. It's not like I said, take off that mask, you loser, or you look ridiculous, or you're cheating here by covering your face. I didn't say any of that, because that's not my feelings. I wrote, do you have any health problems atypical for a late 30s man, because he's a late 30s man, he's like 38, to where wearing a highly uncomfortable N95 all day would be worth the trade-off? Meaning the trade-off of wearing something uncomfortable like that, it would only be worth it if you're in a health situation in your late 30s that would be atypical. So the typical late 30s guy is not going to want to wear that for 12 hours a day at a tournament. It's very uncomfortable. Even if it does help with not catching COVID or the flu or colds. So I said, serious question. I don't know a single person who's caught COVID at this 2024 WSOP. Now, forget the last part. Since then, some people have come forward and said they got COVID at the WSOP, including one person I know. So, okay, whatever. I'm not saying that nobody has it. I say I didn't know a single person yet who's caught it. It hasn't been a big problem here. And it hasn't. COVID is a minor problem at this World Series. It was a minor problem at last World Series. In fact, the 2023 World Series, I caught a virus, as did many other people, and it was a pretty bad virus, but it was not COVID. It was a cold. There was a really bad cold that went around the World Series, which I got, and many people got, in 2023. COVID, a few people got, but that wasn't the big problem last year. When people were saying how sick they were last year, it was that damn cold. This year, I haven't heard of a killer cold at the World Series of Poker, but COVID, there's been some cases here and there, and as I said, one person I personally know got it like a day after I posted this. But I wasn't making the case that nobody's getting COVID, just that it's not an outbreak here. It's not an epidemic here. Anyway, a lot of people got on me for this. Some people said to me, why are you asking for Ike Haxton's medical history? How is this your business? Well, hold on. I'm not asking for his medical history. I didn't say, Ike, I want a copy of your last physical. I want to see your results. I want to see proof that you need to wear that mask. I didn't say that. I asked, do you have any health problems atypical for a late 30s man to where wearing a highly uncomfortable N95 all day would be worth the trade-off? The answer is yes, I do, or no, I don't. I didn't say, which health problems do you have? I asked, do you have any? And if he were to say back, yes, I do have some health problems. I just don't want to talk about them out here because they're not anyone's business. But yes, I do have some health problems. I have to wear it for that reason. Okay, I'd shut down there. Why? Because Ike Haxton is not a bad guy. He's not a dishonest guy. So I'd believe him. If he's going to say he has health problems and he has to wear this and they're atypical for someone his age, fine. I'll leave it at that. It's not a big deal. Others have said, why does it bother you so much? It doesn't bother me so much. It doesn't bother me at all. I just think it's weird. I think it's something that, one, is a little bit unfair to people because he's covering most of his face, even if that's not what he's intending to do. And two, it looks ridiculous. And three, and very importantly, he wears it in the winner's photos when he wins tournaments. And that's really strange. Because when you win a tournament, by definition, there's nobody left. It's just you. So it's just you and the person taking the picture and the tournament staff and maybe a few spectators. That's it. So definitely not a lot of COVID risk there. Additionally, a picture takes, 30 seconds to snap? So he'll take off the N95 for 30 seconds and snap a picture with barely anyone in the room, and that's going to get him COVID? That's not how COVID works. And Ike Haxton is a smart guy, and he knows how COVID works. I know he's been following the news about COVID. I know he's very aware that you're not going to catch COVID by taking the N95 off for 30 seconds for a picture. So he does the picture on purpose. He does the picture because he wants to show off to everybody, look at me, I wear my mask all day when I play. I want you to see this mask. I want you to notice this mask. If you're on the other political side, he's very liberal. I want you to get angry. I'm wearing this mask. I want to tilt you when you look at my winner's photo with this mask on. And at that point, it becomes a political statement. At that point, it is no longer, I'm wearing a mask for my health. It is, I'm wearing a mask and then I'm keeping it on in the winner's picture in order to throw it in your face that I'm wearing a mask. And that's where I start to feel like, okay, I should be able to comment on this. It's not like I just see Ike wearing a mask at a tournament and then go on Twitter and hassle him about it. Because I wouldn't. I really wouldn't. If I saw him wearing an N95 at a tournament, like whatever, I would not go on Twitter and bitch about it. It's the fact that he comments on his own mask a lot on his own Twitter, including this tweet. It's the fact that he wears it in winners' photos where there's no practical reason to do that. So I was really curious. I wasn't being snarky with this question. I was being actually curious. I asked, do you have any health problems that would make this necessary for you? And people really didn't like that I asked that question. How dare I ask that question? How dare I want to know that might he actually have any health problems that are making him wear this mask, or is he just wearing this for some kind of weird political statement or hypochondria?
How dare you?
So I asked. I was polite the way I asked there, right? There wasn't anything impolite about my question to him. Well, he didn't answer me. Then I had various COVID fanatics responding to me, basically saying that COVID isn't over. COVID is still a big danger. And I'm trying to say, look, guys, COVID is a danger to those who are like 85 plus now. Maybe those 75 plus, but younger than that, no. And you can go take a look at the stats. You can go take a look at the death stats, and it's basically non-existent now, except for the very elderly. And this comes from someone, me that is, who is very cautious about the strains of COVID that were deadly to middle-aged people. The original COVID, Delta, all the variants in 2020 and 2021 were dangerous to people in my age group. And they were killing people in my age group. I know people personally who were killed by COVID in their 50s, even one in their 40s. But this was all before Omicron became the variant that became COVID. COVID is all Omicron now. It has been for about 2.5 years. Omicron is far milder, and it doesn't kill people who are middle-aged or even like early elderly. So it's very different than the COVID of 2020 and 2021. And Ike knows this. Now, Ike wasn't arguing with me, but I had a lot of people arguing with me on there. And it was a combination of very intellectually dishonest arguments that I don't care about old people, which is so stupid. Like, how many 85-year-olds do you see in the room at the World Series of Poker? Honestly. Why would they be there? They hardly play tournaments because it's very hard to sit there all day. If you're that age, it becomes challenging. That's why you don't see that many very old people playing tournaments. It's hard to sit there for that long. And then also, obviously, they're not working. You're not going to have an 80-year-old dealer. So the demographic, which is vulnerable to today's COVID, is just not there. And we've been dealing with this with the flu since all of us have been alive. The flu kills tens of thousands of elderly most years. One year it was as high as 80,000. So the flu has been killing elderly people for a long time. And you didn't see people wearing N95 masks at the poker table. Not until COVID. Now again, people ask, why does it bother you? Well, it's not about bothering me. It's about asking, why is he doing it? And if you're going to flaunt it like this, if you're going to wear it in winners' photos, if you're going to make a big deal on Twitter that you wear this mask, then people do have a right to ask, why are you wearing it? And I thought it has to be for health, right? Like, what would be the other reason? I guess the other reason would be trolling people, trolling the right, or just trying to make some kind of political statement. Well, someone responded to me telling me that he's already answered my question and that if I Google it, I can find the answer. Now, I hate when people say that because usually when I try to Google the answer, I don't find the answer. So I'm like, okay, so what is the answer? So they said, well, he answered it on a podcast. I said, okay, well, where's the podcast? So I believe me, if I could get the answer, I wouldn't be asking Ike on Twitter. I don't do things like this. I don't ask things on Twitter where I know the answer just to posture. So I was asking Ike because I was genuinely curious. He still didn't answer me, but I did get an answer. And the answer actually came from KevMath, but not the answer about my question regarding Ike. The answer I got was a link to the podcast. And it was called the Thinking Poker Podcast. And Ike actually liked that and in fact said, KevMath always has it. He always has the facts, whatever. Which he does. KevMath always does have the goods. And he did give me a link to it. This was from February 2024, the Thinking Poker Podcast, which I've heard of, but I've never listened to it before. At the 58:25 mark, he addresses this mask thing. This is on episode 429 from February 10th. So let's take a listen, and I'm going to comment.
Gave people the opportunity to ask questions. You were kind enough before you retweeted it to warn me that if you retweeted it, we're going to get a lot of responses from your haters. A lot of them focusing on the COVID stuff and wearing a mask. It honestly was not that bad from what I saw. I don't know if Twitter just it
was not that bad. Yeah,
hid the worst of it from me. So I mean, I don't want to indulge a lot of the stupid questions, but I do want to just give you a chance to talk about why are you wearing the mask?
No, yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. It's frankly been weird to me the extent to which no one does. It's pretty conspicuous, right?
I'm over here snapping my fingers, but you can't see me.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I continue to wear a mask because I continue to think that it's really worth quite a lot of effort to avoid getting COVID or get COVID as few times as possible.
Now, that's Ike Haxton talking. So he's saying he wears a mask because he still thinks it's worth avoiding COVID. And he'll go on to explain why.
I think that we've reached a point of public near consensus that avoiding COVID is more trouble than it's worth. And people should just go back to how they were living in 2019. And I think that is, frankly, a mistake and not supported by the available evidence. And, it's easy to see how we got to where we are. Trying to avoid COVID is inconvenient and disruptive to the economy. In many ways, imposes costs on capital, on wealthy and powerful people in particular. If, you have to let your employees take enough time off of work when they get sick to avoid spreading COVID and, improve ventilation in workplaces and provide for testing and masks and things like that so that people can work safely. That all imposes a lot of cost on capital. So there's a lot of incentive for society to come to an understanding that actually it's fine to just get COVID all the time.
No. See, he's not totally wrong that there is some cost to companies and that they'd prefer to do the least possible to have to deal with COVID. That part's correct, but that's not the reason that the public has basically said, we're done with this, we want to go back to normal life. The reason the public has said that is because the public was very unhappy with all the restrictions in 2020 where just life stopped and there were so many things you couldn't do. A lot of outrageous rules that were made, such as not being able to go see your dying mom or dad in the hospital, not being able to hold a funeral. Just a lot of outrageous things that people couldn't do in the name of preventing the spread of COVID, none of which worked, by the way. All these measures that were taken didn't work. So people had fatigue from the COVID restrictions, and they just wanted to go back to normal life. Now, the vaccine somewhat provided that, but then people didn't want to take the vaccine, and then there became the big controversy of what should you do with the unvaccinated. And I'm not going to get into all that again, but that caused a further controversy. But the bottom line is, and this is very rarely discussed, even though it should be, COVID became a not so big deal anymore thanks to the mutation called Omicron, which began in late 2021 and became prominent in January 2022 and eventually stomped out Delta completely by early 2022, and that's the variant we've had since. All the other variants have been subvariants of Omicron, and that is a much lesser COVID. In fact, if COVID had started out the way Omicron is, then it would not have been the big deal it is. It would have been seen as like another flu, and we would not have had the societal panic we do. We had the societal panic because the original variant of COVID was pretty bad and was killing a lot of people, was wiping through elderly people very quickly, was killing some middle-aged people, and even some unlucky people who were younger than middle-aged. That's the reason COVID caused such a panic worldwide. Had it been like the way it is today, it'd be something people would acknowledge, but it would not be seen as a huge deal, and there would not have been all these restrictions. You never hear this talked about. If you ask the average person, why is COVID not seen as a big deal today, and it was seen as a big deal 3-4 years ago, the answer would be, oh, well, we vaxxed our way out of it, or we masked our way out of it. It was through good, responsible COVID policy that we finally brought COVID down to a reasonable, acceptable level to where it's mostly something not to deal with anymore. That's what you'd probably hear from people. What's discussed very little is that it abruptly mutated from the most dangerous variant, Delta, to a much, much orders of magnitude lesser variant in Omicron. So at that point, once you got to Omicron 2.5 years ago, and that's where we've been sitting, once you got there and it's much more mild and middle-aged people aren't dying anymore and the younger elderly aren't dying anymore, and even the older elderly are dying at a much lesser rate. Again, orders of magnitude less. Do you treat it the same as you did before when it was a much more serious disease? And we have vaccines too, if you want to take those. Or do you just go back to normal and say, look, it's just another disease we have to deal with? We have to deal with the flu. We have to deal with other diseases. The truth is that before most of us are born, the world was a much more dangerous place disease-wise. In fact, prior to the invention of penicillin, a lot of people died, including kids, of bacterial infections. It was very common to have families where one or more children had died. Whereas nowadays, in the first world, it's pretty rare to have a family where children have died, aside from infants that die because of major birth defects and occasionally something like accidents that tragically kill children. But it's pretty uncommon. So that's a lot of progress. There's a lot of progress. So back in those days, and even through like the 50s, there were a lot of things you had to worry about, and these diseases have all been basically eradicated. So until COVID came, the typical person who wasn't elderly just didn't really have to worry about contracting any disease in the U.S. that was going to kill them. I'm not talking about conditions people get like cancer, but that's not contracting a disease. You don't catch cancer. You don't catch heart disease. You don't catch a stroke. These are things that happen within your own body. So that's a different story. But I'm talking about a communicable disease. We just didn't have to worry about communicable diseases that were killing people, except for the very, very elderly, for our lifetimes until COVID. But okay, now COVID has mutated back to being very flu-like in its danger profile. So people just don't want to put out the effort anymore because they're just not seeing COVID causing the death like it used to. It's become an acceptable risk. And you can say, oh, what? You don't care about old people? No. It's that old people have a lot of things that can get them because their bodies are a lot weaker. And they have a lot of existing health problems that something like COVID or the flu can compound upon and then end up killing them that way. The fact is, a lot of very old people die every day. And things will kill them that will not kill non-elderly people. When you or I fall in our home, we usually just get up and brush ourselves off, maybe have some bruises, maybe sprain something. At worst, we break something, and then we move on. When elderly people fall, sometimes it starts a cycle that leads to their death, like falling in the bathtub. How many elderly people die a short time after they fall in the bathtub? A lot of things get elderly people. Most people that die are elderly. So that's just the way it is. And it's not something you just callously say, but it's a fact of life that when you're very old, you're vulnerable to a lot of things. And your expected lifespan from this point forward is not going to be that long. You hope to live long, but once you get very old, you really can go any day. And very elderly people know that. But you can't revolve the world around that. You can't say, well, we're going to make everybody wear an N95 mask because they could theoretically transmit COVID to the very elderly who then will die. Just like we did not force that for the flu. So what people point to when they want everyone to be afraid of COVID, who say that, oh, look, there's just old people dying now. They say, well, what about long COVID? Long COVID is a form of like an after effect of COVID, where you get COVID and then you never completely recover, or you have other effects from COVID on your health that just never get better. There are some people who believe long COVID is not real. I believe it is real because I got to witness long COVID in someone very close to me. My son Benjamin had long COVID in 2022. He caught COVID in January, which I'm guessing was the Delta variant, kind of the end of the Delta variant. And he got long COVID in the form of fatigue. All of a sudden, and he was only 11 years old then. All of a sudden, he was having to take naps during the day. Every day he'd have to take a nap. He hadn't before. Before COVID, he didn't have to take a nap since he was a little kid. All of a sudden, at age 11, every single day for about 6 months, he was taking a nap. And he had like a general fatigue throughout the day. It started from his COVID, and it just stayed for 6 months. What fixed this? Believe it or not, getting COVID again fixed this. He caught COVID, the Omicron variant, in the summer of 2022. And while he had like 2 really bad days with a high fever and a lot of vomiting, and 2 very bad days for him, and then a third day that was kind of lesser but still pretty bad, then he got over it pretty quickly, and it wiped out the long COVID. Everything was taken care of by that. So, interestingly enough, a second bout of COVID actually wiped out the long COVID. But I got to see the long COVID. I was wondering if it would ever get better. I was wondering if I was going to be one of these people saying, hey, long COVID's real, I see it. And I was wondering if he'd be stuck with that for his whole life. I was hoping he wouldn't, but fortunately, second bout of COVID cleared it, and he has no trace of this, and that's great. So I feel for those with long COVID, but let me tell you something about long COVID. We are not seeing evidence that there are nearly as many long COVID cases as a result of the Omicron variant as there are from the original variant or the Delta variant. And when you see all these studies that these people keep posting on Twitter about, oh, what about long COVID? What about long COVID? You go read the study and you notice this is all about stuff from 2020, 2021. But very few of these talk about COVID that was caught in like the spring of 2022 and beyond. So I don't have any proof of this, but I believe that Omicron is also not causing very much long COVID. Omicron just seems to be a very different animal. It does not cause the lung damage that the original COVID did cause and Delta caused. Omicron is killing at a much, much, much lesser rate. It's basically not killing people who are non-elderly. And it doesn't seem to be causing the long COVID problems that the original and Delta COVID caused. By the way, announcer Norman Chad, he has long COVID, but again, this was from, I think, 2020. Definitely no later than 2021. Just seems like every time I hear about a long COVID case, I say, okay, did this start in 2020 or 2021? They go, yeah, it did. I'm just not hearing of them starting in 2022. Or if it did, it'd be like very early 2022, like what happened to my son, which is probably still Delta. The bottom line is everybody wants to return to normal, and it seems like the public has just decided that it's an acceptable risk because it sucks having to wear a mask all day. I find it very uncomfortable. Even a non-N95 mask, I find uncomfortable. But an N95 especially, I put one of those things on, I'm like, oh my God, I got to get this off. Like it felt awful. So I guess I can do it, but I've actually said if I had to play poker with a mask on, I just won't play. That's what I said back in the days when they were requiring masks. I just would not play live poker wearing a mask. So he's saying that everybody should be wearing masks and you need to avoid COVID. And he'll explain why. But I don't agree. I think everybody should assess their own risk. If he wants to avoid it and wear a mask, that's fine. But I don't think he should be casting this on other people.
Because the alternative is expensive. And that is where we've ended up. And on an individual level, it's really difficult to, sort of buck the consensus that you perceive all around you. But I think that if you put that out of your mind and try to just engage directly with the data, the studies people are doing, the science that's been put out about specifically the long-term effects of COVID, it's not fully clear just how bad it is. And it can't be because it's bad it could be bad on a scale of decades. And we just couldn't possibly know yet. But on balance, it looks like it's somewhere between bad and really horrifyingly bad to get COVID over and over again.
Right.
So, yeah, as much as possible, I'm really trying to avoid it.
Okay, so that's not true. It does not look like it's going to be between bad and horrifyingly bad to get COVID. For the vast majority of people, they get COVID, they have an unpleasant few days or at most like 2 weeks, then they get better, and then it's like they never had it. They feel no effects of it. I'm talking about the modern COVID, 2024 COVID. You get it, you're sick a few days, sometimes a bit more than a few days, you get better, you go on, you couldn't tell that you ever had it. I had COVID. I had Omicron in 2022. It was extremely mild. It was like a mild cold. I felt a little bit funny, a little bit off. That's what made me finally get the COVID test. I thought, you know what, this feels so much like a cold, but something feels a little bit weird. Not cold-like. It was hard to describe. I just kind of felt off. So I took the test and I was positive. So, okay, I had COVID. It was never bad. And when it got better, I was 100% better. I feel completely the same today as I did before COVID. Aside from a few other things that have come up that have nothing to do with COVID. Like a foot issue I have. Like systemically, I feel the same. I'm not sitting here going, oh man, I wish I hadn't gotten COVID in 2022. I'm just not the same since then. It's not like that at all. That's what most people are like. I assume most of you listening have had COVID. And I assume most of you listening are not suffering after effects from COVID. And I assume if you are, this was from a COVID you caught in 2020 or 2021 and not in 22 and beyond, right? So what is this about? Well, from what we can see, it's going to be between bad and horrifically bad. No. Is there a small chance that COVID has caused some unknown issue in people that will show decades later? Somehow weakened your heart or caused something else to happen that would be catastrophically bad when you get to old age that otherwise wouldn't have happened, and they'll figure out when they study this in 30 years? Yeah, maybe, but I mean, that's a long shot. And you can't live your life in fear of that sort of thing. So the bottom line is, when the typical person gets COVID, recovers, everything's better, and when everyone they see around them is like that too, they're not wanting to mask all day like you, Ike. They're just not. It's uncomfortable. It's inconvenient. It looks weird. They just don't want to do it. The trade-off isn't worth it to them. They're willing to take the small risk. And at this point, the risk is very small. That's the reason. It's not that people are misinformed.
And, it's been 4 years since the pandemic started, and I don't want to completely put my life on hold. And this is an occasion to acknowledge my privilege in this, that my life is such that I can completely put it on hold if I want to. Most people don't have that choice for various reasons. And I can be extremely cautious in ways that most people don't have the option to be. A big one being like anybody I know who has kids. I mean,
it's impossible.
It's just impossible. But also, like, I have a job where I can be choosy about when and where I work, and I can wear the protective gear I want, and I can't be fired. Not everybody has that privilege either. But yeah, so I mean, I am choosing to take some risk at this point, but really trying to manage it, minimize it.
How has your experiences been? I mean, I just see like the Twitter side of it, and you just get like random trolls on Twitter. But like when you're actually playing in a poker room, have you had negative experiences, or how negative with people giving you a hard time about it?
Very few. The Twitter side of it is so much worse than the real world side of it.
Well, first of all, those guys can't afford to play those games.
Right.
Yeah. And from what I hear, it's much worse. Other people are having worse experiences than I am for, I think, a few different reasons. Probably the biggest one is that overwhelmingly, I play high buy-in, small field stuff where I have a personal relationship with most people in the field. These are my friends, or at least like friendly acquaintances, and they're not just going to like be rude to me for no reason. And even when I do like play large field stuff with people who I don't know, very often they know me, even if I don't know them. And I think my status discourages people from antagonizing me, because I do hear from other people who say that they get antagonized about wearing a mask regularly when they play big field tournaments with people they don't know, and mid-stakes cash games with people they don't know, and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, I've gotten not zero, but a pretty small amount of grief about the mask from the people I play with in person. Online, completely different story. I get yelled at by people who are upset about the mask or about me having opinions about COVID all the time. But yeah, in person, virtually no open hostility.
Have you ever gotten the sense that even if it wasn't open hostility, that it was bothering somebody, and that may even have played to your advantage, like that they were playing less well against you because they were sort of like bothered by you reminding them of COVID's existence?
Yeah, maybe occasionally in like the more like main event type stuff that I play. I think I have encountered a handful of people who it was pretty clear that seeing a mask got under their skin a little, and they were just not quite openly hostile, but like weird with me.
I do think it was kind of funny also. I mean, I've had this thought before, but it kind of crystallized when you were saying that the biggest barrier to it is just the sort of the weirdness of being like the only person wearing one in a lot of spaces, or one of the only people, but that like everything else about it makes sense to you, and there's just the kind of like, well, but no one else is doing it, maybe I'm the one who's wrong kind of thing. But that it used to be the thing to call people who are wearing masks sheep, and like now what you're describing is of course profoundly anti-sheep behavior, where like the sheepiness is like the thing that you're like fighting against.
Let me stop it right here. I want to say a few things here. First of all, I do believe he probably doesn't get a hard time in person. Yeah, he plays the nosebleed events, and the last thing people are going to do at a nosebleed event is hassle him about a mask. And he does know most of the people, so I believe him on that. Also, in general, people just start shit online way more than in person. And I notice that myself. Like, I have people that talk shit to me all the time on Twitter, and then if they see me in person, they don't start up, even right at the same table. And in fact, last year, there was someone who was at the same table as me who had been talking shit to me on Twitter, And I didn't start up with him because I didn't want to create an issue at the table. And then, like, right after I bust, the guy's talking shit again on Twitter as if he hadn't just been at the table with me. I'm like, come on now. If you can't leave me alone and I'm right at the same fucking table as you and you have nothing to say to me for over an hour, and then after I bust, like a few hours later, you're starting shit again, like, say it in person. So we went back and forth there. And I'm like, oh, seriously, when you see me next time, say this stuff in person and we'll talk about it. Like, don't be at the same table as me talking shit before that and after that and not want to say a word at the table to me. Just say it there. So the truth is, most people just don't want to start up at the table. I'm not saying you should start up at the table because it creates an unpleasant environment for everybody there. But I'm just saying in general, people are much more brave about starting crap online, especially anonymous people. So if you get crap online from people, you shouldn't be afraid to go play poker that you'll run into them because most people are just not going to start up. So that's the biggest factor here, that the people talking shit to Ike Haxton about his mask, they just kind of don't want to go there in person. They just don't want to translate the hostility when they actually see him. And he might have a point that he's a known player and that people might be afraid as kind of like nobodies in poker to start up with a known player. So there's probably that factor too. So, these things he's saying are probably mostly accurate regarding why he doesn't get a hard time. But the whole thing that this host said, I think it's Andrew Brokos who's talking there. This host who was saying that before everybody was wearing a mask and now almost nobody is. So at the time, the criticism of those who were wearing a mask was, hey, you're sheep, you're doing what you're told. And now Ike is basically doing the opposite, because if you're a sheep, then you wouldn't be wearing a mask. And he is, so he's kind of bucking the popular trend, so there's no way you can call him a sheep. Now, that's true. That is true, that if he were to be a sheep, that he would wear the mask when everybody's wearing the mask and saying you should wear the mask. And then when nobody wants to wear the mask anymore, would take the mask off. So Charlie Carroll even pointed out, and this is one of the few times I agree with Charlie Carroll, he said, I actually have more respect for Ike, who wears the mask after nobody is anymore, than those who made such a big deal about the mask at the time when everybody was wearing it because they were told to, and then as soon as they're told that they don't have to anymore, they take it off and pretend like wearing a mask was never a big deal. So that's a good point. I mean, like, at least Ike is sticking by his convictions here, and he's doing something that makes him stick out and get criticism online and all that. So, okay, I'll give him that one, that he's not just being a follower here, that he really believes this is something he needs to do. But I think he's a fanatic. And notice I asked him, notice the whole reason I started listening to this Thinking Poker segment that I was directed to. Notice the reason I listened was because supposedly he was going to answer the question what ailment he has that's atypical of a man in his late 30s that would have him wearing this mask all the time. And you'll notice we don't have that answer yet. Well, spoiler alert, you're never going to get that answer because he doesn't have any kind of health problem, to my knowledge, because he does not say in this interview that he does. He's just saying that he thinks it's very smart never to get COVID. And he's trying very hard never to get COVID. I don't know if he ever has had it, but whatever it is, he thinks that the fewer times getting COVID, the better, that it's very harmful to you long term, and he finds it very important to not get it. Now, should this be his choice to wear something like this, if this is what he thinks he needs to do, if he really is so anti-COVID that he's willing to put up with this all day? Well, yeah, I guess provided that poker tournament rules allow it, fine. But why wear it in the winner's photo? And why make such a big deal on Twitter? Why not just say, put it out on Twitter, why not just say, I am someone who is of the belief that COVID is very harmful long-term to get, even if you recover in the short term. I believe this is something that people will discover much later. So for that reason, it's very important to me to not get COVID and to do as much as I can to prevent getting COVID, even if it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. And I hope you can respect that. And if you don't feel that you need to do that, if you feel that you're willing to take the risk, or you don't think that getting COVID is as bad as I think it is, then I can respect that too. If he were to say that, I'd say, Okay. No problem. I'd have no problem with that statement. I would not want to tell Ike Haxton, don't wear a mask because it looks stupid. Don't wear a mask because nobody else is. Don't wear a mask because it's uncomfortable. Don't wear a mask because I think it's unnecessary at this point for a guy your age. These may be my opinions, but this is his choice. It's his body. It's his choice. Okay? So I'm fine with that. But there's a virtue signaling element to this. Wearing it in the winners' photos. Always commenting about how it's, quote, tilting MAGA. Always commenting on Twitter threads where people are discussing his mask. He really loves to flaunt this in your face that he's wearing a mask. And I think his goal is that he normalizes it and that everybody starts wearing a mask. That he's showing it's okay to still wear a mask. And furthermore, he's enjoying tilting those who get pissed off seeing the mask, which he's indirectly said before. I think that's why he's doing it. I think he really believes the stuff he's saying here about avoiding COVID. But he's not avoiding COVID by wearing the winners' photos. And there were such ridiculous remarks to me on Twitter. People saying, oh, no, he really could catch COVID if he took it off for 30 seconds. You know, you never can be too careful. And people actually telling me you can catch it within 30 seconds. I go, no, you can't. Maybe someone coughed in your face who has COVID. Someone walked right up to Ike with his mask off during the winners' photo, went right into his face. Yeah, maybe he could catch it then. But just from COVID particles lingering in the air from somebody breathing in the room with COVID a while ago, he's not going to catch that. There's not enough of a viral load to give him symptomatic COVID. So there really is no point to leave this on during the winners' photos other than just to make a political statement, a social statement. And that's where I start to have a problem. He can do it. And that's what I've had people ask me too. Oh, why can't he wear it in the winner's photo? You know, he can do what he wants. Well, yes. But what if when I won tournaments, I took off my shirt every time? Every time in my winner's photos, my shirt was off. And people said, why are you taking your winner's photos with no shirt? It looks ridiculous. And I said, well, the reason I take my winner's photos with no shirt is because I want to normalize the physique of overweight guys in their 50s. So being an overweight guy in my 50s, I want everybody to see what I look like with my shirt off. So that's what I'm doing in these winner's photos. And people would say, what the fuck are you doing? Like this is not what you should be doing in a winner's photo. Like, if you want to do that, go to the beach and take your shirt off. Why are you taking winner's photos with your shirt off? Is what they'd ask me. And that would be a good question. It'd be weird. It'd be inappropriate. I could probably do it. If I won an event and said, hey, I want to take this photo with my shirt off, I assume they'd let me. But I would look weird. I'd look like a freak. People would say, what the hell is he doing? So just because you can do something in the winner's photo doesn't mean you should. Doesn't mean it doesn't look ridiculous. And wearing an N95 mask in a winner's photo looks ridiculous. It makes you look like a fanatic. And in fact, if he thinks he's accomplishing something by wearing this in the winner's photo, he's not. Because what he's doing is he's demonstrating he's a fanatic. See, if you are photographed playing with the mask on, but you have it off for the winner's photo, what you're projecting to them is, I'm a rational human being who wants to avoid catching COVID and maybe other viruses while I'm playing, but once I'm done playing and taking a picture, I take it off for the picture, because that's what a normal, sensible human being would do. If you leave it on for the winner's photo, you look like you're either trolling or a fanatic, and you're not going to convince people to wear a mask like you do. Let's go on.
by still wearing it.
It's funny. I still get called a sheep on Twitter pretty regularly. Like that. I mean, there's a lot of things you could call me. Like the hypochondriac would be plausible enough, but sheep, I really don't think so. But yeah, I mean, yes, it does. The feeling of being the only one still doing it is strange and uncomfortable, for sure. I understand why a lot of people who otherwise might wear a mask, might be more comfortable wearing a mask, don't, because looking weird is too uncomfortable. There's this really weird phenomenon that you can see in polling all the time. Fewer polls like this are being run these days, but in, 2021, 2022, as mask mandates were being rolled back, over and over, you would see this exact same thing in polls. They would ask, do you think there should be a mask mandate in general in public places or on the subway or in supermarkets or whatever. And you'd get like 60% yes. And then they'd ask, are you currently wearing a mask in the place in question? And you'd get like 20% yes. Quite a few people want everyone to be wearing a mask. Surprisingly few people are willing to wear a mask when no one else is.
That's really not what was going on there with these polls. What you just showed, Ike, was the fact that a lot of people are hypocrites. A lot of people are virtue signalers. I mean, we saw this with various governors, including famously Gavin Newsom, where they would pass laws requiring mask mandates, and then they would be photographed in public not wearing a mask. The truth is, most people do not enjoy wearing a mask. So if you asked them, should there be mask mandates, you had a certain percentage of the population that would feel they have to say yes because they have to make it look like they are concerned for public health. But in reality, they didn't enjoy wearing masks. So when they would go in public, they would not wear a mask if they didn't absolutely have to. So it wasn't that they wanted everyone to wear it or they felt funny. It was that they didn't really want to wear it, but they wanted to tell everyone else to do it. It's rules for thee and not for me. That's what it was. It was not, oh, we'd only feel comfortable with a mask if everybody's doing it. So that's a complete misunderstanding of what was happening there.
I mean, as of today, I think those numbers are probably pretty different. I don't think that mask mandates outside of maybe healthcare settings. I think mask mandates in hospitals are still pretty popular. But I think at this point, you'd probably get like, should masks be required on public transit? Like 5% of people are currently wearing them and 10% of people would like them to be required or something. But I don't know, maybe the numbers aren't actually that low these days. I shouldn't guess, but they've clearly gone down.
I can tell you as someone who recently had a family member in the hospital, even when there is a mask mandate in place, it is not a trivial thing to get the staff to actually wear the mask.
I'm sure. Yeah. It's very messed up. The spread of COVID in hospitals is just such a grim situation, and the extent to which nobody with any power to do anything about it seems to care. The stats specifically on like how much your chance of dying before you leave the hospital goes up if you contract COVID while you're there are really bad. I can't remember the exact numbers, but like it really dramatically increases your chance of not making it out alive if you're already in the hospital for, say, a heart attack or cancer or whatever. You're in the hospital for something else and you catch COVID while you're there, which is happening constantly these days.
I don't know why he's getting into this. I mean, these are typically very old people in very bad shape where any kind of virus that they're going to catch there could do them in. Same thing could be said for the flu.
I was going to say one of the many things that COVID sort of disillusioned me about was some things that I thought were sort of skills that people were acquiring from poker, like understanding statistics and the number of successful poker people that I know, not like random trolls, like successful poker players on Twitter saying things like, "Oh, it's only a 1 in 1,000 chance of dying." Like that's a really high number. What do you think your odds of dying are usually?
Okay. So hold on a second though. If you look at the chance of dying from COVID as a non-elderly person, these people were a lot more reasonable. Even when COVID was a lot more dangerous than it is today with the original variants and Delta. Even then, your chance of dying from it as a middle-aged person was pretty low, much lower than 1 in 1,000. My point then is that there were other things like lung damage that were coming to people who were middle-aged that were a lot more common than death, and that there's a lot more to worry about than just dying from COVID, but that was actually realistic as well. But if you want to talk about odds, if you look today at those who are getting damaged in any way that we can tell from COVID, from catching COVID today. And just about nobody is, except for very, very elderly people. So if you want to go by the data, you want to go by the odds, all that stuff that Andrew there is talking about, then the typical non-elderly person has nothing to worry about with COVID, because it would be such a small chance that catching COVID now is going to have any kind of major impact on your life. But they obviously are not taking that position. They're dismissing that.
Yeah. Trying to imagine, like, other things where you die 1 in 1,000 times and how you would feel about doing them. It's not like getting in a car. It's like getting in a car crash. It's like, oh, how am I getting in a car?
So anyway, you heard the whole segment on this Thinking Poker podcast from February 10th, 2024, episode 429. You heard the whole segment about the COVID thing. He didn't answer why he's wearing it, aside from just like, I don't want to get COVID. I think it could be bad in the future. I think if I get it now, it'll screw me over in the future. That's basically his answer. So, okay, but that does not really show he's doing this from a rational point of view. He threw out the word hypochondriac. Yes, that's what's going on here. It's hypochondria. It's paranoia. You can't protect yourself from everything in life. You take risks every day when you get behind the wheel of an automobile, you get in an airplane, you go swimming. A lot of things which seem to be mundane activities can kill you. There's risks you take every day. There's even things that can happen every day that you wouldn't expect from within your own body, like a heart attack. Every day has risks to it. And you can't insulate yourself from all those risks. So it's a constant calculation of convenience and lifestyle versus cautiousness. I always like to bring up the driving question. And I say, look, if we restricted all cars to going no faster than 20 miles per hour, there would be almost no deadly accidents in the U.S. So all these auto accident deaths in the U.S. we have every year, we wouldn't have them anymore. All the people that would have died this year from auto accidents would still be alive. So why not just restrict all cars to going 20 miles per hour or less? And the answer would be, it would be terrible. It would take forever to get places, especially things that are far away. Going to Vegas would take 15 hours in the car from LA. So that is why you don't restrict the cars to 20 miles per hour. And then you could say back, well, wait a minute. Are you saying you don't care about all these people that die in auto accidents every year? You don't care about their lives? No, it's not that. It's that there is an acceptable risk to everything for the sake of convenience and for the sake of lifestyle. So if someone asked me, would you rather drive to Vegas in 4 hours or in 15 hours, but with a 15-hour drive, there's zero chance you're going to die, and with a 4-hour drive, you could die, which would you rather do? I'd say I'd rather the 4-hour one, as long as the chance I'm going to die isn't that high, and as long as some of it's under my control, which it is, I'll do the 4-hour drive. Taking all those extra hours is not worth it. You got to look at COVID the same way. If you want to wear a N95 all day like this to stop getting COVID, just in case it's going to do something harmful to you in 30 years, go ahead and do it, but it's not rational. Let's take a call. Caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree with everything you're saying here about, what's his name, Ike Haxton. To me, I've always felt this way. The anti-vaxxers, which I completely disagree with, are at least consistent. They don't believe in vaccines and yet are not scared of COVID. But people like Ike Haxton say they believe in vaccines, but yet live the constant panic of the very thing they just got vaccinated for. It's completely ridiculous. And I think your points are all spot on. I would be criticizing him as well if he took photos of himself wearing a mask in the winner's photos and so forth. And I just want to say that I agree with you about everything you were saying.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And what is your name?
Carmine.
Carmine. Okay, well, yeah, thanks for calling in. I'm glad you agree. And I think it's just common sense. I think the reason almost nobody wears a mask now is because everybody realizes it's not worth the hassle, and they're willing to chance getting a disease that's going to feel like the flu and be gone in a few days.
Yeah, to me, like, he's a poker player. So the analogy I would use to this is, let's say he has quad fives on a 5-5-9-9 jack board, and he's thinking about calling because he's worried about the other guy having quad nines. You know, there's risk to everything you do. He plays poker. He should be able to assess those risks and correctly make the right decision. But I think his political views are influencing his decisions, frankly, because any other decisions you would probably make correctly at the poker table. He's probably a good poker player, but he's not making a good decision here by using the same rationale of data. That's what a point I would make.
Yeah, I agree with you. It just isn't rational to me. And it's funny that all the people on Twitter, like I only had a small percentage of people agreeing with me, at least publicly on Twitter. Most of the people were giving me a hard time, and we're doing it with straw man arguments. Oh, why do you need his medical records? I don't. I haven't asked for them. Oh, why does it bother you so much? I didn't say it bothered me. Like they put words in my mouth.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, you were just simply saying. I mean, I think if the guy was a random person was wearing a mask and didn't, wear it in the photos or something like that, even a regular cloth mask or something, you probably wouldn't have said anything to him. But the fact that he wears it all day, an N95 that's extremely uncomfortable, and the fact that he's putting it in his wearers photos, that's why you probably mentioned it. And I think you have every right to do that.
Yeah, anything you try to put out there on social media in general that's unusual, that people are going to comment on, you know they're going to comment when you post about it, you can't be mad or frustrated when they respond to it. Like, I even posted a picture on social media recently of me sitting in front of a gigantic pizza. And I implied, I didn't state with any kind of certainty, but I did imply that I ate the whole giant pizza by myself. And I got a lot of comments about it, and I did this on purpose. I put the picture out there. It was a funny picture. It was me in front of this gigantic pizza, and I talked about how I gained weight since this pizza was taken, and since that picture was taken, which is actually true. So if I got mad at people for making jokes about me eating a lot or being fat or whatever, then I would be an idiot, because why would I post a picture like that if I don't want comments on it? So if you're taking winners' photos with a mask on, and they go, why are people commenting on me wearing a mask? Well, what do you think? You're asking for it.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. I just wanted to say that, and I really enjoyed the show, Druff, so keep up the good work.
All right, thank you. Good night.
All right.
All right, good. At least it wasn't a caller calling to bite my head off. The ladies' event at Wynn had kind of an embarrassing ending to it. Now, keep in mind, this is not the WSOP ladies event, which to my knowledge hasn't taken place yet. I'll admit I haven't really followed when that takes place since I can't play it. But the ladies event at Wynn did take place and has concluded. This is what it said from a picture they put out on social media. It says, congratulations to Lisa Childers on taking down the Wynn Summer Series $50K guaranteed $600 ladies no limit hold'em event via an amazing 15-way ICM chop. For a payday of $98.68. Great win, Lisa. And then it says in parentheses, these are the women who were involved in the chop deal. And there's a picture of 15 women at the end of this event. So they got down to 15-handed, and the women all got together and he said, you know what? We don't want to play this out. We don't want to have a first place winner and a second place winner and a third place, because then there will be people in 15th and 14th and 13th place, and that's kind of crappy. We don't want that. So how about we all do a 15-way chop? Now, what an ICM chop is, it doesn't mean they split the prize pool exactly 15 ways. It's based upon their chip stack. And it's done with a formula to where it approximates the value of each person's stack. So it's not linear. So where, like, if you have a 100K stack and somebody else has $1 million stack, they're not going to get 10 times what you would be getting. The person with $1 million is not going to get 10 times what the person with 100,000 gets, because it's not worth 10 times, because short stacks have more value per chip than large stacks do, by the way tournament poker works. But anyway, using that ICM formula, which has been around for a very long time, they calculated what everyone should get out of the remaining 15 people, and then they just ended it right there. They didn't play it through, nothing. 15 people left, and they ended the tournament because the 15 women there wanted that. And then they took a 15-person winner's photo, and the winner of it got a whopping $98.68, so she didn't even get $10K. And this is a $600 buy-in, so it's not even like it's a $50 buy-in thing. This is a $600 buy-in, and the winner got a whopping $98.68 because they did this ridiculous 15-way chop. This got a lot of criticism on social media, including from women in poker. Some women were arguing that this makes all female poker players look bad. It makes them look anti-competitive, that poker is a competitive game. And if when you get down to 15 people, if everybody is so afraid of losing that they all agree, because they'd all have to agree here. If 14 out of the 15 wanted this chop and one of them said no, then they'd have to play it out. So all 15 women out of 15 agreed to this chop rather than play out the final 15 spots, which is crazy. And yes, deals do happen sometimes in poker tournaments. You'll see it when there's 3 people left, 4 people left, whatever, where they decide there's too much variance. It just becomes like a card catching contest. And they say, hey, there's too much difference between first and fourth place money. Let's just do a chop, sometimes by ICM, sometimes a straight chop, whatever it is. And then that smooths out the variance because you're just splitting the remaining money in the prize pool. And sometimes what they'll do is a partial chop where everybody's guaranteed something and then you continue playing on for a smaller amount at the end. So that's fine. That even has happened at the World Series before. But a 15-way chop I've never seen in my life. I'm not sure how many people entered this, but no matter how many people entered this, doing a 15-way chop is insane. And the women criticizing this have a good point. Because what they're trying to say here is we have women's tournaments so women can have a more comfortable environment to play. Because there's a lot of women, especially ones newer to the game, who feel intimidated at the table. They feel that men look down on them, that men mistreat them. Whatever it might be, they feel more comfortable playing only with women. Interestingly, I know some women who hate women's tournaments and say they actually get treated worse at these events than when they play open events. I've had several women tell me that. But I've also had women tell me that they enjoy these women's tournaments and it's a different environment and not as competitive and cutthroat. So, okay, fine. But it shouldn't be so anti-competitive to where when you get down to 15 people that nobody wants to play it out, that nobody wants to compete to get past 15. Because if that's true, why play at all? In every tournament, you're going to have people who lose, who bust, who go home with nothing, who go home with less money than they hoped, who have a big stack and chunk it off and don't end up winning like they hoped they would when they were big stacked with only 20 people left. I mean, this happens all the time. So why not play it out? Why are you even there buying in for $600 if when you get down to 15, you're afraid to keep playing? So yeah, it does look bad. It does make it look like that women are afraid to compete when things like this happen. And that's why other women are criticizing this. That's why other women are saying, no, this isn't the message we're trying to put out. We're not trying to put out that the women in poker should be risk averse. And once we get these damn men out of the field, then we can do things like a 15-way chop that the men would never do. There's the women, like the female poker pros or active female recreational players that play a whole lot in Vegas. They're saying, no, we don't like this. This isn't a good thing for poker. You shouldn't play at all if you're going to panic when you get down to 15. That's not what the game's about. You want to play a ladies tournament so you can be in a nicer environment and not be harassed by men. Okay, fine, but play it like a real tournament. So I agree with the criticism. And there are people who say that there shouldn't be ladies events at all, that it's just something they shouldn't do. They should just have open events for everybody. And I don't agree with that. I think there should be ladies events. There's very few women in poker compared to men. And if these ladies events will get more women into the game, that's good. There should be more women in poker. I personally think that women just in general have less interest in poker than men do. The average woman is less likely to be interested in poker than the average man. I think it's just differences between the sexes where people have interest in different things. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. But it's also true that there are ways to have outreach to women to get them interested in the game, ones who otherwise may not have wanted to start playing, maybe because they feel it's an intimidating environment. Even if the men would treat them well, they're kind of afraid to sit down and find out. So if this will get women to the game by only sitting them with other women in these ladies' events, that's totally fine. I have no issue with these events. And I don't think men should find their way into it through loopholes. I think that the men should leave the ladies' events alone, let the ladies play with themselves, and let them enjoy their event. But I also think these events should play out normally. They should play out the way any other event would play. It just wouldn't have men in it. So to chop with 15 people left is pretty embarrassing. So it was very dumb. I think maybe these card rooms should just come up with rules where you can't do a chop with more than a certain number of people. Like, you can't do more than an 8-way chop. I think the Wynn should put that in the future, because this makes them look bad too. I mean, the photo looks ridiculous with 15 women there. Here's the 15 winners of the ladies' event. Like, what the hell? And it's funny how Wynn puts this out there like it's a good thing. And it's even getting mocked by women. In fact, some of the women mocking it are ones who tend to be feminists from their views I've seen them express on Twitter. Like, I'm surprised to see who some of the people are who are giving a hard time here. Final topic we're going to do tonight. Let's cut off the other two and get to them next time. A Caesars-wide system outage knocked out all the restaurants at Paris one night, and people were not allowed to leave until they made payment. This was discovered because I attempted to go to dinner on the night of June 10th with Calwatt, Bart Hansen, who listens to this show, and a friend of Calwatt's. So it was the four of us. I got there a little bit late. I know you're all shocked, but I got there a little bit late. So the dinner was 7:30. I think Calwatt got there around like 7:35, and I got there at 7:40. Anyway, when I got there, I was told the unfortunate news that they were not letting us sit because the system that runs the restaurants was having some kind of network issue, and that not only were they not allowed to sit anybody, but they were having a very hard time getting people's orders over to the kitchen, and anybody who was done eating and needed to pay was being held hostage in there and could not leave. Now, I don't think they were actually being held hostage, and of course those words were not used by the staff there, but I did see a velvet rope that was actually blocking the entrance and exit of the restaurant with an employee standing there watching that nobody leaves. So basically they told everybody, we cannot collect the money from you due to our system being down. So you can't leave. You got to wait until we resolve this. I don't know what they would have done if someone said, look, I've got to go. I have something to do. I can't just sit here. You can't hold me prisoner. And they don't have a right to hold you prisoner there. So from what I could see, nobody tried this. Nobody tried to force their way out. And I guess this outage had just started. Maybe it had been going for about 15, 20 minutes by the time we got there. So it's not like people have been sitting for hours, but they really were blocking people from coming in and out of that restaurant. I asked, is it just this restaurant? They said, no. I said, is it all of Paris? They said, yes. I said, is it all Caesars restaurants? They said, yes. So on the night of June 10th, around 7:30 to 8 p.m., there was this outage. And let me tell you how helpless the restaurants became. As I already said, people could not pay their bills. People could not be seated. If people were already in there and had placed orders, the orders could not be transmitted to the kitchen. And therefore, since the kitchen couldn't receive the orders, they were unable to make the food. Which begs the question, how did restaurants get by, like in the 1970s, before they had these systems? Were there just no restaurants? Because I seem to remember going to restaurants in the 1970s, and I seem to remember the kitchen getting the order just fine, and they made the food just fine, and it tasted just fine. So what was the problem in 2024 that would prevent them from making the meal just like in the 70s without a computer? But apparently they became so dependent upon these systems that everything goes to crap when the system is down. I don't know why they couldn't just write down these orders on a piece of paper and then the kitchen would operate from there, but I guess they're just so used to relying on the system that they were kind of going into a panic and not knowing what to do. As strange as that sounds. It's like they're not trained on how to read papers and do orders from papers. They've got to read it on the computer. So they're having a very hard time preparing the food, I was told. They were not going to seat anyone new while this was going on. And anyone who was done eating could not leave because they couldn't settle the bill. And I assume they couldn't even bring up the bill. So they probably had in the system what these people had ordered, and they probably couldn't print it out for them. So they probably told people, hold on, we can't generate your bill. You can't leave. Now, let's say you needed to leave. Let's say you had a prior engagement. Would you be allowed to leave if it is their system's issue preventing you from paying the bill? It'd be one thing if your credit cards just weren't working and you had no cash on you. And they're like, hey, we're not letting you leave until you settle this because otherwise you're defrauding us if you just leave without paying the bill. So find a way, get someone to come down here and pay for you or whatever. That'd be more reasonable. But when the problem's on their end, it's a different story. Now, it is a matter of how much time has passed. Let's take two extremes. Let's say the waitress came to me and said, I was just about to print out your bill, but the system's down. But in 2 minutes, the system's going to come back up. So just wait 2 minutes, we'll print out your bill, and then you can pay it and be on your way. I couldn't say, what? 2 minutes? I can't wait 2 minutes. I got to get out of here. So since you're making me wait 2 minutes, I'm just leaving. Well, I couldn't say that because 2 minutes is not a long time to wait, obviously. So I couldn't walk out on the bill because I don't want to wait 2 minutes for the system to come back up. But let's say the other extreme. Let's say they said, the system is going to come back in 5 hours, so you're going to have to sit here for the next 5 hours and wait for our system to return. And we're not letting you leave because you owe money on the bill. Well, they couldn't do that either. Because the burden is on them to present me with a bill to pay, and the burden is on them to accept my payment. And if they can't do either, then I have a right to leave. They do have a right to take my information and bill me later, but they do not have a right to hold me there. It's actually called false imprisonment for an unreasonable amount of time while they wait for this to be resolved. So how much is too much time to make you wait? That's a good question. I don't know the answer. But it has to be something reasonable. Now, this outage ended probably around like 7:50, 7:55. I tried to talk them into seating us anyway. They said no. I tried to talk them into at least letting us have some kind of priority if the thing is down, and at least, put us back on priority ahead of everybody else for later, and they weren't hot on that idea either. So I was getting close to giving up, as was everybody else, and then it came back up while we were having this discussion. So I think we got seated like 7:50, 7:55, something like that. I think the whole outage was probably about 30 to 45 minutes, and from there everything went okay. But the people not being able to leave was kind of fascinating. What I think would be the right thing to do there, even if it is like only 30 minutes, 30 minutes is still a long time if you're ready to leave. Like if you want to leave a restaurant, they make you sit around 30 minutes waiting for their system to come up. That's not fair to you. 5 minutes, sure. 30, no. So I think the fair thing to do is either somehow find a way to generate the bill and let people see what they owe and see if they can leave it in cash, or have them leave the credit card number or something to where this can be input manually later if possible. And if not, let people leave their information to be contacted to pay the bill. and you can get a copy of their license, whatever, but say you can leave, but you got to leave your personal information here away from us to get a hold of you so we can bill you for your meal here. And that'd be reasonable. It'd be reasonable to say we're not letting you leave unless you leave us your personal info and prove you are who you say you are, like with an ID. I think that'd be fine. Making people just sit there and wait for the damn thing to come back up. And by the way, they had no timetable. I asked, is there a timetable? No. I said, well, is there an approximate timetable? No. So you're saying it's possible the whole night will go on and this will never come back up? They said, yes, it's possible. I said, is it also possible to be back up in 10 minutes? They said, yes. So they had no idea. So they were really holding everybody there with no knowledge about the system coming back up at all, which is crazy. So I wonder what people in there were saying. The problem is a lot of people are sheep, and they just go along with what they're told to do. They're told the system's down, they've just got to wait until the bill generates. Oh, okay, hope it's not long. And only when it gets really unreasonable do people complain. So if this happened to me, I would have given it a little bit of time, but after that I'd start saying, look, we got to find another solution. And I would have paid. I would have been happy to leave my info to them and then actually sent in the money when they sent me the bill. I would not have stiffed them. But they do have to find some way to let you leave if their system's not allowing you to pay. It's ridiculous. I had a kind of a similar incident 23 years ago. I was coming back from Dallas, and it was on Memorial Day weekend. And I was visiting a girl that I had been with earlier in the year, and then she moved to Texas. So we had a very good relationship at the beginning. And I really liked her, and she really liked me, and then she had to move for work. She almost didn't move for work because of me, but I told her, don't do that. I said, we haven't been together long enough. Don't stay home because of me. Don't turn down this opportunity. So she did move. So she would have totally stayed. Her idea was to stay with me, and I said, no, don't do that. I would have felt awful if she stayed in California because of me, and then we broke up. And I told her that. So anyway, she moved to Texas. She moved to Dallas. And we tried to make it work at first, but it just wasn't. The long-distance thing was too hard. We hadn't been together long enough. So the whole thing kind of collapsed. And then she happened to come back to California to visit her family in May of that same year. And she said, hey, you want to get together? I said, oh, sure. So we had a really nice weekend when she came back in May. So that kind of revived things. And then I was coming back in late May over Memorial Day weekend because the mid-May visit went so well, unexpectedly. Well, the late May visit did not go well. We did not get along. Everything was totally different. The whole thing had fallen apart. So I couldn't wait to leave. Anyway, I already have that crappy weekend. I get back to LAX, and I was parking in one of these lots that's run by the city of Los Angeles. That's an off-site lot. I don't use those anymore, but this was my last time using it. And when you hear my experience, you'll understand why. It's 2001, May 2001. So I get in line to pay for my time there and drive out, and the line is just astoundingly long. I can't believe how long the line is. I'm going, oh my God, I'm going to be sitting here forever. But what can I do? So I'm sitting. It's moving so slowly. And there's two different lines feeding into the main line. So it's from one direction to another one, and then they kind of merge together. And I guess they're taking one car at a time from each line. That's making it even slower. So I'm just sitting here waiting. Of course, I have no smartphone to play on or anything like that. It's 2001. Bored to tears. Just want to get home after a crappy weekend there in Dallas. And then I start to have things I'm wondering. I wondered, what's the maximum amount of time that they can force me to sit here to pay the bill? Now, in this case, what happened was it was Memorial Day weekend, and these idiots didn't think of it, and they didn't hire enough staff. So they just had one person working the booth, and it was way too slow for the huge volume of cars. And they had a number of booths, they just were all closed. So I think they just didn't hire properly, and they, as a result, had this tremendous line, hours-long line, to get out. So I thought to myself, hey, wait a minute. let's say this was a 20-hour line. Well, that wouldn't be reasonable. They couldn't hold me here for 20 hours and not let me leave. They'd have to let me go. But what if it was a 15-minute line? Well, that I'd clearly have to wait. I couldn't say this is too long, I'm driving out. So there's got to be somewhere in the middle between 15 minutes and 20 hours where the line is unreasonably long due to their own negligence and I should be able to leave. Or at worst, just, kind of throw money at them and drive out and not worry about the line. So I was trying to figure this out, but I had no way to figure this out. Of course, I had no smartphone or I could Google this even. So, what do I do? So I'm just kind of sitting in line. I tried to talk to one of the employees there, and they weren't very helpful. I'm sitting, and then I start noticing cars in my line drive away, turn around and drive away. I'm going, what the fuck is this? So an employee comes and knocks on my window and says, hey, just want to let you know this is an invalid line. So everybody who's been waiting in this line needs to get out of it and go back to the main line. I'd already been waiting 45 minutes. There's no fucking way I was going to do that. But some people already had. So I argued. I said, wait a minute. This is a valid line. I followed the exit signs. And they said, no, look at this exit sign. He pointed to one. It goes that way. You went the wrong way. You guys formed a line that shouldn't exist. You didn't follow the exit signs. This is not a valid line. I go, wait a minute. It's not possible. I know I followed them. So I quickly ran over to the direction I went. And I said, look at this. This sign points over here. So they really did have dueling signs, one that pointed one direction, one pointing the other. The guy's like, I don't care. This is still not a valid line. You're going to have to go back to the other line. And I'm like, God damn it. I'm not going to let him get away with this. So I'm going to harness the power of an angry crowd. So I objected. He didn't care what I had to say. But I said, I know he will care if everybody gets pissed at once. He was knocking on one window at a time and getting each car to individually drive away. So I quickly ran and knocked on every window I could. And I said, get out, this is important. And they all got out. And I said, hey, guys, you know what they're saying here? They're saying that this is an invalid line, even though that sign over there pointed us to the exit this way, and we followed it, and we're here in a valid line. They're making us get out, and all the time we waited was for nothing. They're wasting our time. They're saying that we have to go to the back of that other line, even though we followed their own signs. What do you think of that, guys? And everyone went, boo! And everybody got so mad, and a whole crowd of people descended upon this one employee. And I said, you're not going to make us do that? Like a whole crowd of people that I riled up surrounded this dude, and he got very scared. And he said, okay, fine. We're going to close this line, but we're going to get you guys out first. So this now gave us priority, and he took us all out first. And we paid and left. And then the other line was kind of pissed off about that, but not my problem. But anyway, had I not done this, had I not riled up the crowd by going and individually getting each person riled up, he was trying to tell them each individually to go, but I told them all at once by just running and knocking on every window and getting everybody out of their car. And then I told them all at once, and everybody freaked out. So that was my goal. I was trying to get the crowd to pressure this guy to do the right thing. But I really did wonder, as I was in that long-ass line, how long would they have a right to hold me there? I never really got my answer, but I did wonder. And it's kind of the same question here. If you have finished eating, if you're ready to go, and they can't present you with a bill, what can they charge you? What can they do? How much can they hold you? And I think if they can't generate a bill, they have to let you go after a reasonable amount of time. Is 30 minutes too long? I think so. Is 15 minutes too long? I don't think so. I think 15 is fine. I think 20 starts to be questionable. I think 30 becomes too long. I think at 30, they have to let you go. And if I were there and I was stuck there 30, I would say either agree to a discount and agree to a certain point where I get to leave anyway, or I'm just going to leave and give you my info and that's it. And some people who were discussing this on my Vegas Casino Talk forum where I brought it up were saying, well, why don't you just leave cash there? Well, the problem is I think they couldn't even generate a bill. I don't think it's just a matter of how you can pay. I think they probably couldn't generate a bill at all. Because remember, these restaurants, they generate a computer-printed bill. So without the computer, they can't generate the bill. So you can say, I know I ordered this and this and this. So they may say, well, we don't know that. We don't know for sure. You could be misremembering. You could be lying. We don't know. So it's tough on both sides. I understand why the restaurant doesn't want to let people walk out. But it was unbelievable. They have this velvet rope blocking people from leaving. Fortunately, that didn't get us because we hadn't started yet. But I wouldn't have tolerated that. I would have said something about it. Anyway, that is it. I got to go. I'm not going to get enough sleep as it is. And try to finally cash the damn World Series of Poker. So I hope you enjoyed your World Series content. I know a lot of you have been waiting for it. A lot of interesting stories, as we always seem to have during the World Series. Always something going on here. I will definitely have another World Series show before the main event. In fact, I'm going to be leaving Vegas, so I won't have as much of a personal connection to it. I won't be there to see things, to talk to people, but I'll still have my ear to the ground, be able to talk to people who I know that can tell me things. But I will be back later on. I'm just leaving for a while. There's only so much time I can spend out here these days. Fortunately, not much hotel fail for me. That's why I haven't been complaining about hotel stuff. You're probably wondering, hey, Druff, how come you're not bitching about the hotel? Hotel's actually been okay. So, only thing that isn't okay is the thermostats. They've set the thermostats to 68 minimum. I mean, you can't set them to 67, 66, 65. And I don't normally like it cold, but these thermostats don't actually make it as cold as they say. So when it says 68, it's not really 68. You know how hotel air conditioners work. It's just never the temperature it says it is. So there's actually a trick to be able to force these thermostats to be able to get down to 65. And it's if you hold the on and the display button together and then press the temperature up button while you're holding on and display. If it says LEN on the screen, that means you've put it in the mode you can take it down to 65 and it'll permanently be there. If it doesn't say LEN, then just let it go and try again. On and display together, then press the up arrow. Wait till it says LEN, and then it'll be in the mode. It can go down to 65. It's much, much better. Or the low-tech solution, breathe into the sensor on top. That'll make it think it's warmer than it is. The AC will come on, and you'll get some more cold air. Good tips for you. Follow them. Shalom.